Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Anthony Witrado. Anthony sporting the homage sweatshirt, hoodie, whatever you call this. I say it's like a long sleeve T-shirt with a hood on it. How you liking it so far?
I love it. I love it so far. You were right about the comfort of this stuff. It is right there. I was very happy too when I opened the package, and this was the fit.
Yeah.
The thin long sleeve hoodie, T-shirt, sort of sweatshirt kind of deals. Yeah. That's it right there. I love those things. So
I'm with you.
Oh yeah.
If you haven't already, make sure you're following Dodger Blue 1958 on both Twitter and Instagram. We're going to be giving away that exact same sweatshirt to one person on each of those sites. So follow both of those places, tag along, and we will you give yourself a chance to win one. Obviously, you can check out Homage's stuff at the link below in the description. We appreciate everybody joining us live on YouTube, live on Twitter. Not sure if we're on Facebook tonight. It looks like we might be having some technical issues on that side. But thank you to everybody who's joining us. Lots to get to tonight. We're going to talk Juan Soto because there are reports that the Dodgers have made him an offer. We are going to talk a little bit about Gavin Lux. If you watch my interview with Fabian Ardai, I thought the most interesting thing he said to me was on Gavin Lux. I want to get your thoughts on that, as well as take a little bit of time to talk about the state of the Dodgers 40-man roster and just talk logistics, because there's a lot of things people want to do, but do they have the spots on the roster to actually accomplish those? Let's get to a couple of these super chats, some super chats before the show even started. We appreciate it. Freedom says they're making Soto like his value in the MLB market is as good as what the Dodgers paid for Ohtani. Not even close. Ohtani, you have an outstanding pitcher and a hitter all in one. There's some validity to this. There are reports of Juan Soto getting 15 years, $622 million, I believe, is the Athletics prediction. It's worth pointing out that Ohtani made $700 million. There are deferrals, net present value on that. But what would you say, Anthony? We're going to get to Juan Soto, the alleged contract offers later. But how do you talk somebody through just the rising costs? Like, yes, whatever Ohtani got paid, but it's also 12 months later, and it's a different world than it was 12 months ago.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think the situation is the deferral stuff is not new. Let's start there. It was just the biggest headline because it was Shohei Ohtani and it was the Dodgers and it was the richest contract in totality, like, in headline that's ever been signed in Major League Baseball. So that's what drew sort of all that attention. But teams are going to make deferral offers to Soto as well.
Yeah.
And I think when you take that into account, whether he takes that kind of deal or not, fine. But I do think that teams are going to use the Ohtani contract against Soto.
Yeah.
Is what they're going to negotiate against is, one, we saw you play the outfield in October.
Yeah.
And we've seen you play the outfield for several years now, and you're not an outfielder. You're going to be a DH at some point, even though you're in your mid-late 20s. And the Ohtani deal, like, let's say he says, I want 600 and Ohtani signed for 700. The value is dropped with the deferrals. They're going to say he essentially plays two different sides of the ball.
Yep.
Starting next season. And that raises his value. So essentially your value is not near there. That's going to be the negotiation against him. The negotiation back is that I'm on a unbelievably ridiculous Hall of Fame track as an offensive player, and I'm still in my 20s. That's his biggest selling point.
Yeah, and he's going to say, I only need one team to pay me Ohtani money. I don't need all of you to agree that I'm worth the same, because the Ohtani net present value, $46 million a year, whatever they've calculated at. All he's got to do is get one team that's willing to go to 550 or 600, and he's going to be golden. So again, we're going to talk Soto contract stuff in a little bit, but I do think, like, comparing him to Ohtani, it's like looking back and saying, Freddie Freeman's not getting paid what he would get paid on the market today. Mookie Betts is not getting paid what he would get on the market today. And so when you sign is almost more important than how good you are today in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. And, and guys like Ohtani and Soto sort of defy that market, whatever year they might be a free agent. But yeah, like there are other guys where if you come out in the wrong year, your market gets depressed. If you come out in the right year, you
Yeah.
might have 3 teams just upping the ante on you. It all sort of depends. Look, no one thought Prince Fielder was going to sign what he signed with, for what he signed for in Detroit. But like you said, it just takes one team.
Yep. Yep. Richard, sorry, I knew this super chat was coming. He said, for the love of God, can we just get the Dodgers back who want to stay and not waste on time on Soto? Defensively, he can't catch a cold. Freedom had another super chat, by the way. Just sign Teo, give him a reasonable amount to stay. Soto is an average fielder. I admit he can hit bombs, but he just wants too much. Yeah, I mean, look, all of these points are fair on Teoscar Hernandez. And again, if you listen to the interview with Fabian Ardaya, he said in pretty strong words how clearly Teoscar Hernandez has made it. He wants to be back with the Dodgers. And so whether or not that's how things play out remains to be seen. But let's get into some of the topics we've got on tap for tonight, Anthony. Let's start with the state of the Dodgers 40-man roster, because I think this is a good entry point into the conversation about Juan Soto, about Gavin Lux even, who we're going to talk about a little bit later. And so with the non-tendering of Brent Honeywell and Zach Logue, both of those guys have been taken off of the 40-man roster, leaving the Dodgers with 36 players who are currently under team control. That does not count the 7 guys who have elected free agent: Walker Buehler, Blake Treinen, Clayton Kershaw, etc. So Jack Dreyer is the one guy who has been added to the 40-man roster thus far this offseason. He was the relief pitching prospect that they protected from the Rule 5 draft. And there's kind of 3 buckets that guys are in right now. There's guaranteed contracts, arbitration eligible, and pre-arbitration guys. So guys on guaranteed contracts are Glasnow, Yamamoto, Brazier, Barnes, Smith, Betts, Freeman, Muncy, Rojas, Edman, Taylor, and Ohtani, a.k.a. the guys who have been around, the veterans who have made it to free agency. You can add Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin to this list as well, because they've agreed to contracts with the Dodgers to avoid arbitration already, since both of them missed all of last season. Those were pretty easy conversations for the Dodgers and their agents to have. You have 6 more guys who are arbitration eligible. That's Gavin Lux, Anthony Bonda, Brusdar Graterol, Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, and Alex Vesia. And then everybody else on the 40-man roster is in what's called pre-arbitration, which is basically the Dodgers get to tell them what they get to make this year, and there isn't any sort of negotiation. That list includes Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, Landon Knack, Andy Pages, James Outman, and a bunch of other younger guys. So, Anthony, when I say all this, and I set this all up, because the important number to know here is that 36 of the 40 spots on the 40-man roster are currently full. And as I mentioned, 7 guys are free agents: Buehler, Kershaw, Flaherty, Kelly, Treinen, Teoscar, Kike. Not all of those guys are expected back, but Buehler, Kershaw, Treinen, Teoscar, and Kike, I think most people would love to see those 5 back. That adds up to 41. That's before we get to a starting pitching frontline guy that they've mentioned. So how do you see the Dodgers navigating 36 guys on a 40-man roster with 5 or 6 holes, so to speak?
Yeah. I do think that they will explore some trade market stuff. Nothing like blockbuster-ish, but I think if they can move off somebody who they think is expendable on that 40-man, and bring back somebody that they may see a value down the road, even possibly, they may make a move like that where I think, when we look at it now with our eyes currently, it might seem like a minor deal. But there's the Dodgers, one thing that they value as much or more than any organization in baseball is roster flexibility.
Yeah.
And they've gotten themselves into a position right now where they don't have much of it.
Yeah.
And anytime that they've done that in the last 5, 6, 7 years, they've found a way to wiggle out. Sometimes it hasn't always been before spring training, but they have found a way, because again, they see significant value in roster flexibility for several reasons. Some of it being cost predictability, some of it being the ability to make moves down the road. And so there's no doubt that, the day that the season ended, they started looking at ways to sort of figure out what they were going to do with this roster and how they were going to create space where they needed it. Because you're right, they have guys who are not signed right now, who they and a lot of people on this chat, a lot of people who are going to watch this show want to bring back. We may see some hard decisions made, and guys may not come back. Somebody like Kike Hernandez, possibly. Possibly somebody like Teoscar Hernandez. We'll see, but it's very possible that we see guys like that who are fan favorites end up walking elsewhere. And so I do believe though that this front office has earned every bit of slack to say like, look, they're going to figure this out. They're going to do what's best for the organization and for this team going into 2025 and looking to defend the title. In that, I have no doubt.
Yeah. And I think back even to just the last couple of years, last offseason. In December, they made a trade where Victor Gonzalez and Yorbit Vivas got sent to the Yankees in exchange for Trey Sweeney, Caleb Ferguson was moved. Michael Busch was moved. So those were all four guys that were moved. All four guys. I can't remember if Trey Sweeney was on a 40-man roster yet. I believe he was. But basically, it was four guys going out and only one 40-man roster spot guy coming back. So there will be some moves like that. At some point, they'll be able to add a bunch of these guys to the 60-day IL. Gratterall, Stone, Kyle Hurt, Emmett Sheehan, and River Ryan will all go to the 60-day IL the moment they are eligible, which is when pitchers and catchers report. I imagine one guy, Clayton Kershaw, will probably be waiting to sign until the 60-day IL opens up, just because he has an agreement, I'm sure, with the Dodgers of some sort, and they want that roster flexibility. But I just highlight it because, to your point, they're just going to have to make some moves. Somebody asked us on the last show, and I'm curious, on the 40-man roster, who do you think is the most likely guy that might get moved off of it? Matt and I both agreed that there's four catchers, and I'm not including Dalton Rushing in that, but Hunter Fiducia or Diego Cartaya, it feels like one of those two guys is probably going to be moved. I guessed Fiducia, Matt guessed Cartaya. He also mentioned Chris Taylor as somebody he thinks might be on their way out at some point this offseason, just from a roster makeup perspective and kind of where he fits. So any other guys on the 40-man sort of jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Fiducia seems like to me like a good bet, just because I think that they still think they can possibly get value in Cartaya.
Yeah,
down the road, like real value for him. Chris Taylor would be an interesting one because they held on to him for a reason, partly because of the contract that he had, but he's in a walk year now, and it becomes much more attractive for a team to pick him up and be able to shed him when the season's over, or even DFA him at some point if he's not playing well. So, yeah, I think that at the moment, I would say that those two guys, like if you're looking for one guy who's sort of a fringe player, Fiducia. If you're looking for a guy who like we all sort of know, I'm looking at Chris Taylor. And I think, some of the hope out there from some, maybe, thinking like it's a guy like Gavin Lux or something like that. We'll get into that later, but no, it's not going to be, and then there's some of the fringe kind of reliever guys that they have on there too that are always sort of susceptible to that kind of move. But yeah,
my guy Michael Grove, I believe, is going to be out of options this upcoming season. So as much as it pains me to say, that's the type of guy that the Dodgers will. Yency Almonte was another guy who they moved last offseason because he was out of options.
Similar situation,
Brent Honeywell got non-tendered because he was out of options. So when you can't offer the team flexibility, it makes it easier for them to feel like you're a guy to be moved.
Yeah, and that's always a prime indicator of guys who are in that box that are going to be moved or could be moved, because again, they want that roster flexibility, and we've seen summer after summer how they shuttle guys up and down, whether it's relievers or starting pitchers or bench guys. That is sort of the MO of this club, and so if you are a guy who cannot provide that flexibility, you're in danger.
Totally. And obviously the Dodgers are going to do their best to get value for the players that they believe has some. And so, it's possible they look at a guy like Diego Cartaya, who they might not see a future for, but if they think 6 months from now his value is going to go up because he's going to start hitting a little bit more in AAA and then regain some of that prospect stuff, then maybe they keep him around. And a guy like Hunter Fiducia, who's probably capped out the value he will ever have, and there's a team out there somewhere that would probably love to have him as their backup catcher at the major league level, for the cost that he offers you, the flexibility that he offers you. So we'll see. But just looking up and down again, trying to figure out options. I believe Michael Grove has been up and been sent back down 3 years in a row, 2022, 23, and 24. So that would leave him out of options. And that kind of, I believe he's the only one on that. I'd have to go check on like a guy like Anthony Bonda, but I mean, Anthony Bonda is so good that he probably doesn't have to, they're probably not too worried about how many options he has left. Yeah. Bonda has no options left. Oh, that's why he was DFA. So dumb thought by me. But So something to keep an eye on. 4 spots. Again, 5 more guys headed to the 60-day IL, but that's not going to be till February. And so if Buehler, Teoscar, and Kike all come back, I suppose you could fit one frontline starter, Blake Trinan. I mean, that's 5 guys that I just named for 4 spots on the 40-man.
Yeah.
Let's move to another topic of conversation here, and that would be Juan Soto, a gentleman that some people think might have a spot on that 40-man roster at some point. There was news today. I know a lot of people don't love the Juan Soto conversation, but there was news. Randy Miller of NJ.com said the Dodgers were among 5 teams who have presented offers to Juan Soto and Scott Boras. There's some debate online about how quickly he might make a decision, whether or not he's sort of fielding a first round of offers, and then we'll go back and take another week to field sort of secondary follow-up offers, or if in the next 7 to 10 days, we might get a decision from him. But Anthony, the way I want to frame this to you, because we've kind of danced around this a little bit, but Fabian Ardaya, when he was on, again, if you missed it, please go check out that interview. It's on our YouTube page. I love Fabian. He's the best. And I basically just asked every hot stove question I could think of. And the point that he made over and over, which is not surprising, I think, other than he just said it in clear terms. When the Dodgers meet with a guy like Juan Soto, they're never offering him one thing. They're always saying, here's 3 possible, a buffet of options for you. Do you want short-term high AAV? Do you want long-term with tons of deferrals? Do you want something in the middle? 3 different options in the middle, opt-outs, no opt-outs. They're basically putting everything on the table, which is how Ardaya said every negotiation has gone basically except for Ohtani, because Ohtani came to them and said, this is the number. And they're like, great, we'll sign. So I wanted to present you with 3 potential offers. And I want you to kind of do 2 things. I want you to rank these 3 in order of what's most attractive to least attractive. And then tell me if there is a line somewhere in between the 3 where you're walking away from the table. I would do this one, but not these 2 or whatever. So the 3 I came up with, people can tell me I'm crazy on these, but I came up with a short-term AAV, high AAV, a middle-of-the-road, high dollar number, but opt-outs for Soto. And then the third option is the biggest dollar number, but some deferrals baked in. So The Athletic currently has, by the way, as their prediction, and their guys the best, if not one of the best, at predicting. And people are going to hate this number. I know it. I'm just telling you the number The Athletic has posted. 15 years, $622 million is their prediction. That's an AAV of $41.5 million. Okay. So option 1, short numbers, high AAV would be a 4-year, $240 million contract. $60 million a year for 4 years. Soto gets to hit free agency again at the age of 30. Option 2 would be 10 years, $500 million, front-loaded with some opt-outs. So it's maybe not $60 million a year, like I said in the first one. Maybe it's 52, 53, and then after 3 or 4 years, he can opt out if he wants. Option 3, 15 years, 622. That's the Athletic number, but with deferral. So to recap, these 3 options are 4 years, $240 million, 10 years, $500 million with opt-outs, and 15 years, $622 million with deferrals. If you're the Dodgers, and those are the 3 options in front of you that you have given to Juan Soto, I'm curious which one you are most interested in him saying yes to, if any of them.
Yeah, the short one, the 4-year deal.
So that's $60 million a year, even for doesn't scare you away that much.
No, I think with the TV deal and with the sponsorship money that they have coming in, especially with guys like Yamamoto and Ohtani on the roster, they're covering that easy.
Yeah.
And coming off a title, I think they're covering that easy. I am intrigued. Now, if you're asking me, if he were to say yes, which one do I want him to say yes to?
Yeah.
If you're asking, it's the 4-year deal.
Okay.
If you're asking me, like, sort of realistically, what do I think he might consider, and where's that middle of the road where I like the deal and he might like the deal? It's the second one.
Yeah. 10 years, $500 million. Maybe it's 52.5 a year for the first 4 years, and then he can opt out and go back to free agency if he wants to. Yeah,
I think that if we're talking realistically, and if he were to end up being a Dodger, and let's say the Dodgers do not offer the 15-year kind of deal.
Yeah.
It is that 10-year deal with the opt-outs.
Okay.
Because if you can give them an opt-out after like 3, 4, and 5, let's say, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, and I think he's okay with that because it would give him the long-term security that he is seeking as a
Right.
26-year-old player.
If he just sits and hangs out, he gets 500 million and never opts out, guaranteed.
Right. And if he continues to be a stud,
Yeah,
he gets out of this contract before he's age 30, maybe, let's say that, depending on when those opt-outs are, but let's say it's 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. He gets out of this contract and he goes into free agency again before he's 30, where he might get paid on another 6, 7, 8 kind of year deal. It
means he was worth every penny in the first 3 or 4 years of the deal that you signed him to.
Right. Which means that, yes. And if he's doing that, your chances of getting another World Series out of this window go up exponentially.
Yeah.
If he's that good, and that where he's going to opt out after 3 years. I think that seems like the most realistic possibility if he were to take a Dodger offer.
Yeah. Now, just out of curiosity, from your perspective, not what Juan Soto wants or doesn't want, if any of these 3 deals were signed, is there any of those 3 deals you would not like? Or would the line of "I'm not interested" be below all 3 of those?
No, I think the only one where the "I'm not interested" bar hits is the long term
15 years, 622 million.
Yeah. I don't want any part of that. I don't think that the Dodgers want any part of that. If that was part of the menu, there's some significant details in there that we don't know about.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, the Dodgers love deferrals. I would, if they offered a deal like that, it's probably, he's getting paid over the next 30 years, not over the next 15 years. Correct. Kind of a thing. Yeah. But again, I just think it's interesting to talk through. And I think most people that have any interest at all, and I listen to the chat, there's a lot of people that just say, "Hey, no thanks. I'm not interested in Soto, period," which, to each their own. Yeah. But I think most people would agree with you that are interested in Soto at some level is like, there's almost no AAV number that's too high on a 2, 3, or 4 year deal for a guy like Juan Soto. Because again, as crazy as 60 mil a year sounds, it still doesn't sound as crazy as 622 million, no matter how many years that's stretched over. And again, I mean, even signing Soto till he's 40 years old or whatever doesn't sound that crazy, because some of these guys, it feels like, are signing contracts until they're like 43, 44. Soto feels like a guy who could probably still hit when he's 40 years old, the way that he's built and the way that he plays the game. So, but I do think the 4 years, 240 would be most people's number one option. Although the point you make about, if he does opt out of that second deal, he's probably made you all sorts of money in the first 3 or 4 years. And if it ends up being a 4 year, $210 million deal, then the Dodgers are probably like, great, maybe they re-engage on a negotiation a second time, or maybe not. So again, we don't know what the contract offer specifically was, but Randy Miller of NJ.com saying the Dodgers among 5 teams who have made an offer to Juan Soto. I'm guessing we will hear something in the next week or two about, maybe, there's always some sort of leak of like, hey, the Dodgers offered the short term. But even when you hear that, remember, that's probably one of the offers that were made from the Dodgers to Scott Boras.
When I was on the beat every day, the Boras guys would typically go through sort of the same song and dance with teams, where they would meet with all the teams that they thought were seriously interested. And you assume everyone here is negotiating in good faith. Yeah. And then you go through that first round, you say, okay, ballpark us some offers here. Then Scott would talk to the client, Soto in this case, say, here's what we're looking at, throw them up on a whiteboard or something like that. You start to carve them up, you go through them and you go, okay, here are the 4 that we think are serious, who we think are serious about us, and who we think are willing to make the kind of commitment that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Then you re-engage those teams. And then again, you probably whittle it down to maybe 2 from there. And then and then Scott would try to pit those 2 teams against each other. And it's usually why his deals take a long time.
Yeah.
Because once you get past that first stage, then there's no timeline, because it's all dependent on who's going to engage Boras on, okay, fine, we'll talk about the number that you're talking about now. And that sometimes that takes weeks, sometimes it takes days. You never know.
Totally. And look, and he knows when
Victor Martinez tearing his ACL.
Right.
And then Prince Fielder signs for over $200 million when there was no market for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when it's Juan Soto, people will wait. People will wait on Juan
Absolutely.
Soto.
Yeah.
And so if you're Scott Boras and you know that, ultimately you feel like you've got confidence you're going to get the number that you want.
Which makes
Let's
Teo's situation interesting.
Yeah.
But because it is a Boris guy, I think he gets some clarity probably before the winter meetings. And so if he decides that he isn't going to wait for him to actually sign Soto to actually sign before he
Yeah.
signs, I think he at least has some more clarity of what his market looks like after that first round goes by.
Yeah, and that's the interesting piece because there's a number of teams that I'm sure are interested, excuse me, in Teoscar Hernandez, but who also realistically know that they don't have a chance on Juan Soto because maybe they talked to Scott Boras or they've gotten wind of the numbers and they're saying, look, we're not swimming in the 60 AAV or the 15-year windows. So I wonder if a couple of those teams maybe get aggressive on Teoscar Hernandez to try and force his hand to make a decision before a team like the Dodgers, who might be in with Soto till the end,
right,
has to make like, well, Teoscar, if he gets starting to get cold feet and saying, hey, I just want to sign, I want to make sure this number's still here and that it's not going anywhere. That'll be interesting.
Those
to
teams
watch.
might put a clock on him, right? Like coincidentally, this isn't one of his old teams, but like, let's say Soto decides that the Blue Jays aren't a realistic option for him, taxes or whatever reason, he doesn't want to live in Canada, something, right? And he decides they're out. And then they go, okay, you know what? Full court press on Hernandez now.
Yeah.
And then they make him a real offer, and they say you have 72 hours.
Right.
And the Dodgers aren't prepared to make him an offer because they think actually maybe Soto is going to swim in that 4 to 5 year deal range. We got to wait this out. And then Teo's in a situation, so are the Dodgers.
Yeah. And I think if I want to comfort any Dodger fans who are having panic attacks listening to us say that about Teoscar Hernandez and the possibility of him getting pushed early, the good news is there is just not. I don't think the teams will have leverage in situations like that because as much as they might say, hey, this offer is good for 72 hours, he can look at them and say, okay, tell me the other corner outfielder with pop and his bat that's out there that you're going to go give that offer to too. Anthony Santander. Okay, there's one. Like, what about the 4 other teams that just made me offers? So we'll see. But again, the timing of all of this is going to be really, really fascinating to navigate. Next topic I wanted to hit, and then we'll close out the show with some questions tonight. I mentioned the interview I had with Fabian Ardaya. One of the questions I asked him is like, okay, Mookie Betts is moving to the infield. We've been told that. What's the domino effect for a guy like Gavin Lux? And there were 2 things he said that were interesting to me. One in particular I want to ask you about. The first was Fabian Ardaya is absolutely still under the impression that Mookie Betts might play outfield next year. He was basically like, yeah, I know he said it. We asked follow-up questions. He didn't really answer, but he's like, I mean, I guess there's a world where they sign Willy Adames and then Mookie Betts is just playing the outfield for another year. Like, this might be their goal. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, which I found interesting. But the more interesting thing was I basically point blank asked him, hey, what do the Dodgers actually think about Gavin Lux? Because I'm in shows like this with you and I'm interacting with people on social media. And I know what, I would say a majority of Dodgers fans think about Gavin Lux. And it's that he's a guy who's on the trading block. It's a guy that maybe they want to see traded. They're not buying into the second half, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what Fabian said, quote, I think their actions have shown they've been on the very high side of Gavin Lux for a long time. Basically saying, for all the people that think the Dodgers are out on Gavin Lux, this is the same guy that they tried to make their starting shortstop twice. And yes, it didn't work. But keep in mind that he hit the second half of the season and played very good defense at second base. And oh, by the way, is I mentioned, I believe, a pre-arbitration player or an arbitration. He's an arbitration player, excuse me. So he's under team control for a couple more years. That quote, of all the things Fabian told me, Anthony, that the Dodgers have been on the high side of Gavin Lux for a long time, I found to be the most interesting. I'm curious to hear your reaction.
Yeah, not surprising. He knows the team as well as anybody. And I think that anyone with any sort of insight and any sort of just looking at how the team has treated him, would say the same thing. It's they're not hiding that part of it. And we said it early on in the season. We said it, Jeff, you and I, when they moved him off a shortstop in spring training. We said it when he struggled coming out of the gate. We said it throughout the spring, throughout April and May and June when he struggled. We said they are going to give him every single opportunity that ever existed to play his way into an everyday position.
Yeah.
And they did. And it paid off for them in the second half for a bit, and he was all right in the playoffs. He was fine. But yeah, I think that they've invested in him, not financially, but like they've invested in not moving him so when he was a prospect, when he was the number one prospect in baseball, in not moving him when he had first come up and had some success, and then his value was very high, and he was under all of that team control, and all everybody was calling about Gavin Lux because they knew the Dodgers were in a win now mode, and they weren't exactly sure how win now Gavin Lux was at that time.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they continue to hold on to him and say, no, we're going to keep this guy, that's an investment in itself, right? Because they passed up other opportunities so that they could keep him and play him. And I'll tell you what, there's no scenario where he's in a Dodger uniform and he's in a very strict platoon or he's kind of like a bench guy.
You don't think they'd platoon him? Because I think that's possible that he just doesn't play against lefties.
I think
which is an 80-20 platoon, to be fair, based on how many righties there are. But I think that's the path forward, honestly.
Now, that's what I'm saying. If this is an 80-20 split, regular guy, everyday guys sometimes get 80-20 splits to, totally. If you're not Freddie Freeman who plays every day, right? Like, so I don't think that's out of the question. But like, I'm saying they don't view him as like a reserve type of player. Because for some of those platoon guys, if they start to struggle a little bit against their advantage, they go with somebody else.
Yeah.
Lux, I don't think they're going with anybody else with Lux against left. You know what I mean? Like against right-handed pitching. Like if he's their guy, he's going to be their guy.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because I see some people in the chat saying like, hey, we already knew what they thought about Gavin Lux. The reason I asked was because I think there were lots of explanations for why Gavin Lux had the leash that he did at the beginning of the season. And you could make the case that it was because of how high the Dodgers were on him. You could also make the case there were some other guys who were just as bad, if not worse. And there weren't obvious options coming up right behind him. So the reason I asked this question is because now seemingly every path is open in front of them. They could trade Gavin Lux. They could go acquire a shortstop. They could acquire a second baseman. They could acquire a center fielder. There's a bunch of ways this plays out where Gavin Lux isn't needed and depended on. And so I think the fact that the Dodgers have been consistent both with their words as well as their actions. And if a guy like Fabian Ardaya, who's a beat reporter who's plugged in, is saying this, it tells me that it's not just smoke. The Dodgers aren't just saying the right things to maintain trade value, but they're looking at a guy who in the second half of last season had the 13th best weighted runs created plus in all of Major League Baseball. That would be Gavin Lux. And saying, hey, we believe it. Gavin Lux in the second half of last season, how's this? Had a better weighted runs created plus than Teoscar Hernandez. So all the people that want Teoscar's bat back, Gavin Lux was more valuable offensively than Teoscar was in the second half of last season. It's just interesting. Now, doesn't mean he's going to be around. The Dodgers could value him, and Garrett Crochet could become available, and they could say, hey, we want position players, which is reportedly what Chicago is interested in, and Gavin Lux could be on the next train out the door. It just tells me that maybe they're not as eager to move Gavin Lux as I feel like a lot of fans might be.
Yeah, they're going to have to get something of real value for him if they were to move him. And like you said, just to reiterate, just because we're saying that they are so high on him and Fabian thinks the same thing, and they probably are, does not mean he's in a Dodger uniform when the season starts. It's this is all dependent on, part of the reason why they value roster flexibility is so they could do something like that if it came up, right? But they also understand, like, if they're not in a position where that deal's available to them, they are more than willing to go into the season with him as they're starting something.
Yeah. And look, and I said on here, and I want the record to state, I was one of the first people a year ago saying Mookie Betts should be playing shortstop, or I guess it was a couple years ago saying Mookie Betts a shortstop. Then it happened, and I got crushed and laughed at like a month ago when I said, hey, maybe when Mookie Betts is moving to infield, I'm like, maybe he's playing shortstop again. If Mookie Betts, this is what I believe, and you could tell me I'm crazy if you want, people in the chat, Anthony, whoever. If Mookie Betts gets the entire offseason to practice playing shortstop and going into the season believing he's going to be the shortstop, I think we're going to get a much better defensive version of Mookie Betts at shortstop than the one we saw at the beginning of last offseason. Like that's just what I believe about Mookie Betts. He may not be
There's no doubt.
perfect, but he's going to be better than the guy who got the job 7 days prior to opening day.
There's no doubt in my mind that if they told him tomorrow, hey, we're planning on going into opening day with, or at least into spring training with you being our shortstop,
Yeah.
you're going to see a much better version of shortstop Mookie Betts than we saw this season.
Totally.
And that's not to say he's going to win a Gold Glove, but much better than what we saw him be this season. I do believe that he's good enough of an athlete. He's a hard enough worker. He has not ever done anything in his professional baseball playing career to make us say that if this guy tries to do this thing, he will absolutely fall flat on his face.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything to make us think that. And so I think if he believes he's going to be the starting shortstop, he's going to be a much better version than we saw this season. And if that were to happen, that opens up so many avenues for the Dodgers in terms of roster.
Yeah.
And what they can do and what direction they can go with things. It really gives them that flexibility we've been talking about all show. Is that going to happen? I don't know. When they said we see him being an infielder again, it also raised a whole bunch of questions about Gavin Lux too. Like,
Yep.
I mean, it's a really interesting situation that they have on their hands. Like if they were doing a what's the NFL show, Hard Knocks, if they were doing something like that, for baseball, like the Dodgers are a super interesting team because they got guys who are established in the big leagues who they really do value, who they got big question marks on just in terms of like, do they have room for them?
Totally. And it could be, we mentioned a Lux platoon. It could be Mookie plays second base against lefties and he plays shortstop against righties. It could be that Gavin Lux doesn't get traded and they are able to acquire a shortstop one way or another, and Mookie Betts is back in right field. Like, I just think the point is that all these things are on the table. And when you hear the Brandon Gomes quote saying Mookie Betts, the plan is for him to play infield next year, it doesn't mean jumping to the conclusion that Gavin Lux is out the door is the right one. He might be. Sure. He might be. But it won't be because the Dodgers don't value him there. Let's get to some questions. If you've got any questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. We do have a super chat from Freedom here we're going to get to. He said, maybe I'm just too old-fashioned and I'm 70-year-old Dodger fan, but the love and respect of the game has been lost. It's become the love of how much I'm getting paid. Freedom, first of all, thank you for joining us. Shout out to you. 70-year-old Dodger fans are always welcome around these parts, so thank you for joining us. Do you agree, Anthony? Like, do you feel like the money that is being thrown around now is changing the way that players relate to the game of baseball?
No, I don't think so. I think it changes how they relate to like the fan. Sure. But that's every sport. It's several professions too that are not athletics. Like it's the nature of rising market values and things like that. I don't think they can't relate to the sport anymore. Players are as good as they've ever been right now. Yeah. Ever. And if you think that just because a guy bat flips or pimps a home run or talks a little trash, that he doesn't work hard when the camera isn't on and the game isn't being played before 9 innings, that's silly. Yeah. These guys aren't like, let's say for the offensive guys, you do not get to step in the box and have any sort of success if you're not working hard, given the kinds of arms that you're facing night in, night out, even guys who we think are trash, who if you step in the box against them and you're like a AAA player, like a good AAA player, that guy blows you away. Yeah. And so like, the money is what the money is. There's no question about that it's crazy. But to say that relates to, or that equates to them not respecting the sport, not loving the game, not working hard, not taking it seriously, that's way off base. I've been in the clubhouse with these guys. They care. They absolutely care. And they have the evolution of the baseball player has gotten them to a point where there is such little room for them to get better in terms of like the peak kind of players. Yeah. Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, Skeens, like those kinds of guys, Screwball, that to be better, like you immediately jump into like a Hall of Fame conversation if your peak is long enough.
Yeah.
Like that's how good these guys are.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And I would say to the same point that you're making, I just think it's hard because sports just changes. I mean, I think college football is a perfect example of this. And I remember listening to some guys way smarter than me talk about college football. And they were like, look, 10 years ago, if you transferred, everybody looked at you like you were a quitter. Like it was, but nowadays, and so when NIL first started and the transfer portal first opened, there was a little bit of that. But they're like, you just have to accept that nobody looks at these guys as quitters anymore in the transfer portal. Like it's just the way that the game is played. It's way that the sport works in college football. And so I think, yes, hearing numbers like $60 million a year, $700 million for Shohei Ohtani, those numbers don't make sense to us.
Yeah.
But I also think like $40 million didn't make a lot of sense to us, 15, 20 years ago either. And that's what guys were getting. And so I think it's just a different looking baseball player nowadays, which makes it a little bit like it just makes the way that people perceive how things are being done a little bit more complicated and a little bit different. But I'm with you. I don't think guys love baseball any less. Like, look at the Dodgers. Look at how much this meant to Walker Buehler and Mookie Betts and Teoscar Hernandez, and tell me that these guys don't love the sport of baseball. I've always thought the Mookie stuff was total BS about, he bowls too much. He doesn't love baseball. It's like, listen to those guys on the podcast talk about him and how hard Mookie Betts works compared to the baseball players are in awe of how hard Mookie Betts works. And so I think sometimes they get a reputation that's a little bogus, but
listen to the conversation that on Mookie's show about how hard Freddie was working every single day just to get on the field.
Yeah.
And some days, in the postseason, it didn't work out. Yeah. I think the other part of this too is like, one, fans have always for decades have had a hard time relating to the professional player, the major league player. Part of it being money. And even though the numbers were much smaller then, there was still a significant gap between the guy who was working construction and bought a ticket in the right field bleachers versus the guy who was actually playing right field.
Yeah.
And also to say that guys in the 70s, 60s, 80s, pick a decade, didn't care about the money they were making is also silly.
Yeah. Shout out to Cesar Sosa, by the way, for recognizing the Dodgers as world champion. Cesar, we appreciate you being in here. And we appreciate that you're acknowledging the championship that the Dodgers have won. That's on the hat that I'm wearing, the shirt that Anthony's wearing, the side of the hat that Anthony is wearing. So, Cesar, we appreciate you being in here. Thank you so much for your support of Dodger Blue 1958 and the DodgerHeads show. And Cesar's a Padres fan, so he just accidentally tweeted championship, and here we go. We're gonna have a little fun with him. So, thank you, sir. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Let's get to some of these questions. Alalia says, has Anthony done the pitcher exercise you did with Matt? I want a workhorse for once. I don't know if we talked through your rankings of Snell, Fried, and Corbin Burns necessarily.
We have, yeah.
Okay.
When you put the chart up for me.
Okay, so there you go. You may have been the originator of the chart. Who knows? I get lost on which of these shows. I know I've done it with Daniel. I've done it with Matt. I've done it with you now. So there you go. I mean, remind me. I think just everybody on our show, I believe, is one thing we are unanimous on is that Blake Snell of those three is the guy, given the contract prediction, is number one on our list. Is that right?
No, I chose Max Fried.
Oh, you went Fried.
No.
I was going to say, geez Louise. I'm like, man, okay, never mind.
God, no. No, I was Blake Snell 1, Burns 2, Fried 3.
Okay, there you go. We got a moderator in here saying that Blake Snell just sent a picture of him. Oh, Blake Snell just posted a picture of himself on Instagram in a Dodgers jersey. That's a real thing that just happened on Instagram. So we may have this
adult, current Blake Snell, or as
current
a kid?
Snellzilla, Dodgers jersey number 3. Everybody's retweeting it. So Daniel Starkin just tweeted Blake Snell breaking his own news ? So stay tuned, folks. We might be hanging out for a little while here to talk Blake Snell. Yep, Snellzilla 4 on Instagram.
Oh, wow.
Just posted a pic. I mean, if you go on any social media right now, I'm sure it's all you're going to see. So we'll see.
That's his account.
That's his account. So who you got? Passan, Heyman, who do you? Bob Nightingale. Who do you like here breaking this news? Fabian Ardaya. I mean, I think he's headed out to Thanksgiving today, he said. So let's hope that nobody's ruined his Thanksgiving with this timing.
Boy, oh
Who
boy.
you got breaking this news? If Snell signs with the Dodgers in the next 30 minutes, you got Passan. I mean, Passan's got to be like minus 400 favorite here, right?
Well, technically, Snell broke the news.
That's true. That's true. Let me say, and I don't think he said anything other than posting the picture, which the picture's more valuable than 1,000 words, has never been more true than just a picture of yourself in a Dodgers jersey. It
would be super weird if he just posted that and it didn't mean anything.
I'm with you. It's fascinating to me that however long ago that happened, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes ago, that we have nobody that's reporting any news. So
they are working the phone right now.
You want to make a prediction? Passan's the favorite. You want to go off the board and take somebody other than Passan, or if I gave you Passan or the field to break a Blake Snell contract, who are you taking? Shams? God, get out of here. Woj from the grave, just breaking the news here.
No, look, man, Passan's one of my best friends. I was at his wedding. We lived together before. I'm going with Jeff.
There we go.
I'll tell you what, all of those guys are burning their phone up right now, though.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's trying to figure out what the heck's happening and whether Blake Snell is just screwing with people or whether it's real. But perfect timing on that one. Let's just get to a couple more of these. I'm going to keep refreshing my social media feed.
I mean, I don't know if I can concentrate anymore.
TQT says if the Yanks lose out on Soto, they might pivot hard and overpay for Teo. Would it be smart to get into a bidding war against the Yanks for Teoscar Hernandez? What do you think, Anthony?
No, I don't think it is. If that price gets too high, I would rather just not swim in those waters. If the Yankees, if they think that's their answer, then let them go hard at him. And I want that guy back. We've talked about it all summer. He became one of my favorite players fast and in a big hurry. He's one of the guys I want back almost no matter what.
Yeah.
But if they get into a bidding war and like we start approaching the $200 million mark, yeah, I think that the money is spent better elsewhere.
Well, and I mean, I don't even know if the number is going to get that. Like, I think with Teoscar Hernandez, I think getting to a fourth year at 25 million, like 4 years, $100 million sounds like a lot to me. 4 years, 120 million, like I don't even think the numbers are that big just because of the age, because of the defense, and because of, again, you have to remember that the starting point, David Vassay just retweeted the picture of Snell and said, hello, by the way. And I believe Vassay may be a guy that had a relationship with Snell. I can't remember who it was on the Padres he was connected to, but I'm just saying Vassay retweeting a Snell Instagram
would be very interesting. Moving off the Teo conversation.
Yeah.
If he was the first piece off the board, last year he was like the
Blake
last.
Snell has signed a 5-year Dodgers deal with the Dodgers. Mark Feinsand. Snell just posted a picture of himself in a Dodgers video uniform on Instagram.
Wow.
So there you go. Mark Feinsand, baby. 5-year deal, Blake Snell. Sign him up, Anthony. We cooking. Andrew Friedman is cooking. Jack Harris, per source, Snell and the Dodgers are, quote, close to a deal to bring the 2-time Cy Young Award winner to Los Angeles. I'm going to go out on a limb, Jack, and say we can get rid of the close word when the man himself is posting a picture of himself in a Dodgers uniform on Instagram.
100% agree.
Mark Feinsand and Jack Harris, again, both reporting that Blake Snell is a Dodger. So there we go. Shout out to the 2,100 people that are in here now, and that number is likely to rise because Blake Snell is a Los Angeles Dodger, Anthony. This is a guy the Dodgers have been chasing for a long time. They pursued him last offseason.
Into existence, Jeff.
Hey, Hallelujah asked the question. This is a guy who they pursued last offseason. This is a guy who they pursued at the trade deadline, but the Giants were not going to trade him to the Dodgers. And this part, I think you said it was surprising if he would be the first one. Here's the reason I'm not surprised. Because Blake Snell waited around a year ago and did not get the deal that he wanted. So I was actually thinking he was going to be the first guy to sign simply because he didn't want to get stuck with a 1-year opt-out deal again. He didn't want to keep believing the lie that the better deal was coming. The better deal was coming. I think he just decided, I want the deal that's best for me. 5 years, $182 million, Jeff Passan just reported. 5 years, so $36 million pending physicals. Sources tell me and Jorge Castillo. So 5 years, 182 is the number for Blake Snell. I'd have to go back and look at, I'm curious what the projections were.
We have 4 years, and I don't
110. So he goes way over the projection.
Good for him.
So, and again, it's the Dodgers. Non-zero chance there's deferrals involved here with Blake Snell.
I'm fine with that pay.
And again, to go back to his number,
you know what? You got him early. You got him off the board, and it is, again, what the Dodgers value is cost certainty, and they now have a really good sort of outlook on what that payroll and what that pitching looks like. That was the guy. That's the guy. We talked about them getting a frontline kind of guy. They just landed him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it might not be done, but they took care of that hole.
Yeah. His numbers over the last 3 years, by the way, average 25 starts a year, 135 innings pitched, but over the last 3 years had a 2.82 ERA and a 2.98 fielding independent pitching, 12 strikeouts per 9 innings, 4.2 walks per 9. In the playoffs, a 3.3 ERA in 48 2/3. So a playoff performer. The walks are concerning, but the strikeout numbers are among the best in baseball, if not the best. He's a lefty for the people that are concerned about right, left, that kind of thing. He is a lefty. And this is the quintessential guy the Dodgers value. We don't care about 7 innings. We don't care about 32 starts. When you are out there and on the mound, you give us the greatest chance of striking out the guy in front of you is basically the criteria. Criteria A for the Dodgers. And if you're building a starting pitcher, it's basically Blake Snell. That's the guy they just went and acquired. Again, one of the biggest strikeout pitchers in baseball from the left-handed side.
Curious if you mentioned, you talked about the piece about him being the first guy off the board. I wonder if he knew this was his situation going in. The trade didn't happen, and I wonder if he thought, maybe watched that postseason run, maybe thought it beforehand, and said, "That's where I want to go." Engaged with the Dodgers engaged back, and they said, here's the parameters that we want to play in. Can we get something done within these? And they were, they were quick to figure it out. Like, it's not surprising that they got him, because I did think that he was going to be a top target for the Dodgers. I am surprised at how quickly it happened, just because how much did he play with other teams?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Thanksgiving yet.
Well, and what the report was about a week ago that the Dodgers met with Blake Snell, or was it 4 or 5 days, like end of last week, maybe Thursday or Friday of last week that they met with Blake Snell. But again, I mean, to some degree, like, he was coming off a Cy Young a year ago, and he knew what the offers were then, So like in some sense, this is a 14-month negotiation that Blake Snell has been in the midst of with other teams. And so I imagine he knew what the numbers were and what he wanted to get. And again, he signed himself up for security. Just to give you some more stats here on Blake Snell, last season, Baseball Savant's a page that I like, gets at a lot of the stuff that's not simply like, what the end result, but how did we get to the end result for these guys? And they give you a bunch of percentiles. 100th percentile means you're the best in baseball. First percentile means you're the worst in baseball. He was in the 99th percentile in hard hit rate, meaning fewer guys got balls hit over 95 miles an hour off of him than just about anybody else in baseball. 98th percentile in strikeout rate, 98th percentile in whiff rate, 98th percentile in expected batting average, 96th percentile in expected ERA, 92nd percentile in average exit velocity. Everything is over the 80% mark, basically, with the exception of fastball velocity, which was 79th percentile. I think he's going to be fine. Walk rate, we mentioned, that's not good, 19th percentile. And then ground ball rate, 51st percentile. He's league average there. So not only were the numbers on the surface, Anthony, incredible, 1.05 walks and hits per innings pitched, 3.12 ERA and 145 strikeouts in 104 innings last year. But all of the underlying metrics on Snell are also incredibly encouraging. So again, if you're just joining us, breaking news, 5 years, $185 million for Blake Snell signing with the Dodgers tonight. That news broken by Blake Snell himself, and then Mark Feinsand was the first to confirm Blake Snell's own reports about his contract. And so, it's interesting, Anthony, because this is a guy we're familiar with. We've seen him in the division now for the last couple of years. And oh, by the way, he was on the mound in 2020 when not my guy, Austin Barnes, chased him out of the game alongside Kevin Cash. They tag team chasing him out of the game, which brought the Dodgers, a victory in the final game they needed for the 2020 World Series. And so, he's a polarizing guy in Dodger circles, I would say. But given what we just saw, I feel like the temperature around Blake Snell's name in Dodger circles now is much warmer than it was a year ago. A year ago, people were way less interested in Blake Snell, I think, than they were today. Do you think that's because of the year of starting pitching we just saw? Do you think it's because now they've seen Blake Snell, kind of be awesome multiple years in a row? Like, why do you think that might be?
Yeah, I think probably just a better familiarity with who he is. I think when they played him in the World Series, he was good, budding on great. Arguably, he was great during that run for them. But I think Dodger fans just really didn't know a lot about him, didn't really know who he was, hadn't seen him pitch a lot. And, so when he went to San Diego and then last season with the Giants, they saw him and they saw what he could do. And Giants fans are going to be so pissed if he comes out of the gate hot because he was trash for them when he started the season. But, going back to him signing so late and basically use those first, 6-7 starts as his spring training for them. And he was bad. And when he turned that corner and he got right, he was lights out. He was a front end kind of guy. He was a number one kind of guy. And I think that's who the Dodgers just signed.
Totally. And to the point that you just made, I just think the way that the Dodgers, how last season went, people are just going to be more open to it. And look, they went and got the guy that every single person on this channel has been pining for. There's literally, you're not going to find anybody on this that didn't have Blake Snell as option A in the market of free agent starters that they wanted to get, and look, I'm not claiming it was not in any way, shape, or form an original idea. It's not like we were this creative group of people who thought of acquiring Blake Snell.
Right.
I do think there's some, and I'm not even saying validation. It's just, it makes me happy. This is the guy that I wanted. Andrew Friedman, not dilly-dallying, not wasting his time. He's just going and getting it. Let's get to some of these super chats. David Ramos asks a question that's one I've been asked multiple times in checking my text. What does this mean for Walker Buehler? I would say nothing, Anthony. I don't think this impacts Roki Sasaki. I don't think it impacts Walker Buehler. I think they were swimming in this market. If there's one person that this impacts, it's Jack Flaherty. And there were some people that weren't happy about the things that we said about Jack Flaherty, Matt and I, on Sunday night, just because we didn't think that he swam in the same waters as a Blake Snell, and we thought they were going to go after a guy like Blake Snell. But I don't believe this impacts Walker Buehler one bit. Do you agree?
No, different. It's a different pool. Yeah. Walker's money is not where Blake Snell's money is going to be. And neither is Sasaki's. I think that they went into the offseason knowing they could go get those guys, and we're also still putting the real, throwing the hook in the water for a big fish like Snell. He was probably their guy. I think the fact that this happened so early, that he's the first guy off the board and he's a blockbuster guy, tells you both sides looked at each other and went, let's rock.
Yeah. We got a special guest joining us at halftime of the Los Angeles Lakers game. Daniel hopping off the Lakers beat momentarily. I was just saying, Daniel, this is the guy atop every single one of our wish lists. Are you surprised at the move? Are you surprised at the timing, how early this move has been made? Where are you at?
Well, first of all, the timing is perfect because you guys were already on here, I'm sure, talking about whatever the Lakers.
We literally had just been asked the question about.
Conversation about
we had literally just been asked, hey, who does
before.
Anthony want more than anybody else?
That's incredible. I would say I'm a little surprised this early. Obviously, we're not even at Thanksgiving yet. We knew Snell wanted to kind of be one of the first ones to sign just because of, the debacle from last offseason and
Yeah.
and whatnot. And I would say I'm surprised at the numbers more than anything, like 5 years, 182. And they said, I forgot who reported it. Someone said some of it's deferred. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
fine
they're
chance
getting
that deferred
a
money.
little discount
Shocker.
there. But overall, I felt like this was a perfect fit, and the Dodgers had been linked to Snell in the past, and obviously everyone wants to come to the Dodgers right now, so you're not surprised at the interest from his side. So definitely a little surprised that it came this early, but I think all along it made sense. Like you said, our whole staff has been on this. Since the offseason started, he's been our top target, for starting pitchers. So
No
hell of a
opt-outs.
start. Yeah, hell of a
say,
start.
John Morosi reporting, as you just said, no opt-outs in the deal. Obviously pending physical, that kind of thing. So lots of stuff that will continue to come out. There's no qualifying offer attached to Blake Snell. So that's another important piece of this signing. He does not cost a draft pick in addition to the actual signing itself. So Daniel, one other question, because I know you've got to hop back off and go watch the rest of this Lakers game. Are we winning? Are we up 2 or down 2 at half? I just glanced.
They're down 2, but they were down like 8 or 9, so they had a nice little end to the half there.
Trending in the
Sounds
right
like
direction.
Austin Reeves is hooping.
Yeah. Honestly, Austin, I think he had like no points, and then I was caught up in the Snell stuff for about 5 minutes, and then I looked again, and he had like 12 points. So whatever he did, I'm sure it was great.
He heard
Morosi just tweeted, "This is Blake Snell signing 112 days earlier this offseason than he did last offseason." So, Daniel, real quick before you go, we were just having a conversation of what does this do for the rest of the offseason? Anthony and I are under the impression this, like, nothing has been taken. I mean, Corbin Burns and Max Fried, you could probably take those 2 guys off the table.
Sure.
Sasaki, Bueller, like any of the guys that they've already been rumored to, connected to. I can't imagine. I mean, I would even include Soto. Like, I don't think this signing impacts any of those moves other than the other quote unquote top tier starting pitchers. Do you agree?
No, I agree 100%. I would say, like, I'm still not expecting the Dodgers to sign Soto. Like, I've never really expected that, but I don't think this really affects anything at all. Like, the Dodgers still need at least one more starting pitcher, and that's not even counting Clayton Kershaw. Like, we know he's coming back, but I would say, they probably still need one more starting pitcher. So I guess now that they might kind of be in wait and see mode a little to see what happens with Roki Sasaki, which might not be great news for our guy Walker Bueller. Like, it might be, let's see what happens with Sasaki. If we don't get him, then we circle back, and who knows if Walker will still be available in January. But, we know what this team's needs are, and we know they still, like, they're not just going to make one move. So I don't think this really affects all that much.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair. Freedom, real quick with the super chat, says, how is our chance of getting Sasaki? My oldest saw him pitch in Japan. He said he was better than Yamamoto. Anthony, I'm curious to get your thoughts, because Daniel brings up an interesting point. We talked about the 40-man roster. At some point, you've got to have room on that list for all of these guys. Now, Sasaki theoretically would not be taking up a 40-man roster spot, at least not right away. He could be saved off of the 40-man roster and then moved up to the 40-man roster whenever he was ready to make his debut. But do you think that the Dodgers kind of had the Sasaki bucket, the top end starting pitcher bucket, and the Walker Bueller bucket, and that they were only going to be able to pick from 2 of those 3? Or do you think there's a world where they just say, screw it and dig for all 3?
Yeah, I think I think there's money earmarked with this organization where they had money to play in the Soto waters to a point. I'm with Daniel. I don't think that there's really, I don't think they are a realistic team to sign him unless he says, like, yeah, I'm interested in a 4-year deal kind of situation.
Yeah.
But they had money there, which also is part of the Teo money. And then I think they had money for the Clayton Kershaw, Walker Bueller, Roki Sasaki deals. And not saying that they could only sign 1 or 2 of those guys. I mean, all 3 of those guys are a possibility still. And then they had the money for their biggest need, which was a frontline starting pitcher. They got that guy. And with the deferred money, who knows what it's actually going to cost them for the next season. And so I think they still are involved in those other 3, Kershaw, Bueller, Sasaki. I think that is still very much alive.
Jonathan with the super chat here, 5 for 182. Andrew Friedman assembling the Avengers of 120 innings pitched or less with a history of serious health issues. Maybe he can trade for DeGrom next. I mean, Daniel, I'll come to you because we've only got you for a couple more minutes. By the way, shout out to the 3,300 people now in here on Facebook, on YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. This has been a constant. Every time the Dodgers, it feels like, acquire somebody. We had the same conversation when they acquired Glasnow a year ago. It's, acknowledging the obvious that innings pitched has not always been his strong suit. If you look at Snell's last 3 years, 2022, 128 innings, 2023, 180 innings, 2024, only 104 innings. We know the Dodgers are going to a 6-man rotation, so they don't need 32 starts and 200 innings out of Blake Snell, but how concerned would you be about the workload potential of a guy like Blake Snell, who is 31, I believe, turning 32 years old?
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would have been 3 or 4 years instead of 5.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I still think, they're probably going to get a good return on this, just knowing A, how talented he is. He's got 2 Cy Youngs, speak for themselves, and B, like, when you pair that with the Dodgers pitching guys, like, we might not have even seen the best of Blake Snell, which is pretty crazy to think about just because he has had those 2 Cy Young seasons. And I do think, like you said, with a 6-man rotation, with all the depth they have in place, like, the days of guys throwing 200 innings, like, at least in this organization, are pretty much over. Like, I don't think we should, expect that from anyone. But I do think with Blake Snell, he's been a second half guy his whole career. Like, he's always been a notorious kind of slow starter and then takes off after the All-Star break, which obviously, when you're the Dodgers and you're playing important games in September and October, that's what you want. And you might not get like the length of a true ace like that. That's probably the one downside. But as we just saw, in the playoffs right now, like, we'll take 5 innings. Like, if you want to give us 5 good innings, like, we will gladly take that. And obviously Snell, that's kind of what he's been known for, like a 5 and dive type guy, or 6. But if he's gonna give you 5 elite innings per start, 6 elite innings per start, like, I think if you're the Dodgers, you'll take that all day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Daniel, I know you need to move from one championship caliber organization to another championship caliber organization, so we'll let you get back to the second half of the Lakers game. We appreciate you joining us. We are going to be immediately adding somebody in his place.
Yeah.
Matthew Moreno is here. And Matt, I got to say,
Bring
I
him
haven't
on.
said this yet, so I'll say it to your face. 10 out of 10 on your Blake Snell tweet. Do you want to tell the people what you tweeted out? Because I just saw somebody else retweet it, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was Blake Snell was smart to finally stop trying to go up against Austin Barnes, and they're going to be teammates now, so he doesn't have to worry about facing him anymore. It doesn't get any better than that. And the 182 million or whatever it is certainly doesn't hurt as well.
Justin Lorber, I think, had a similar one where it was Blake Snell's face, and then it was just a spiral of Austin Barnes faces around him. So, hey, if you can't beat him, join him. But Matt, give me your just immediate reaction to, again, all of it, the 5 years, 182, the timing of it, as well as just Blake Snell, the pitcher.
The pitcher, I've been on here. Daniel alluded to some of it. Like the 5 and dive stuff worries me a little bit, just because when you discuss like aces, that's typically not what you're kind of expecting or going to get on a somewhat consistent basis. I do also agree with what Daniel said is, hey, getting him with the Dodgers pitching coaches like maybe corrects some of that. And again, not to sound like a broken record, I do also agree with Daniel where, hey, like the Dodgers would have killed for 5 innings from a start, consistent 5 innings from a starter in October. So, if that's what you're going to end up getting and they win a World Series, great. There's no doubt that Snell as a talent certainly adds to this rotation and was a need. Like, to me, it's been a given that Teoscar Hernandez or Juan Soto, I guess, would be in the outfield. So I haven't really been too concerned with that decision. I was more worried about, hey, how are the Dodgers going to add to their starting rotation? Because to me, and I know you guys were just discussing this, like, and Jeff, you and I brought this up the other night, like they need to sign, in my opinion, at least 2 starting pitchers this offseason, or sign or trade 2 starting pitchers this offseason to add to the group that you're already counting on with Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Clayton Kershaw, Ohtani, all that stuff. So, it's certainly a big benefit there. I think what still surprises me is that this got done this quickly, because it's not necessarily Andrew Friedman's MO, right? Like if Snell's market had sort of there hasn't really been a lot of traction again.
This wasn't hanging around the backboard waiting for a couple misses and then catching the guy on the discount.
Right. Yeah, like this is, hey, we're going to get our guy. This is what we want. I think, Anthony, you mentioned it. Like, they identified, like, this is somebody that they wanted. Obviously, there's history with Friedman and Snell there. So that I think probably was a factor. I think from Snell's standpoint, my guess is he was a little bit more motivated. Maybe had a little bit more urgency on his side to sign something that he felt was, respectable, instead of lingering around, because we saw that last winter. He was coming, Jeff, you and I, we just discussed it. He was coming off a Cy Young season and nobody wanted to sign him.
Nobody wanted it.
Obviously
that was my question to Anthony is like, what is it why has the temperature changed so much? Obviously in his market, but also I feel like, I'll speak for myself. A year ago, I was like, nah, I'm good on Blake Snell. And now he was the number one guy on my pitching wish list.
Yeah.
I think some of that is just a matter of circumstances, right? Like if there was, no disrespect to Blake Snell, but if there was, a younger, clear-cut ace out, a Juan Soto type starting pitcher out on the market, like everybody would be saying, hey, he's the first one. But Jeff, you put up the chart a couple of weeks ago, like comparing, the proverbial big three pitchers, Snell, Burns, and Fried. There are pros and cons with each of them, right? Like there really wasn't necessarily one where you said, okay, that's definitely the guy, go get him. He's, arguably that person is Sasaki, but then the drawback there is, one, like you don't know how that's going to unfold. And two, he still is an unproven MLB talent. Like as great as his potential and ceiling may be, like until you sort of see it, like that is a question mark. Yeah. So yeah, I think, the qualifying offer isn't attached to him this time around. So maybe subconsciously you weren't thinking about that last year, but this year, knowing that it's not there, it's like, hey, it's only money at this point.
Well, and I think we all just watched the pitching season that the Dodgers just had. And I think, that we're probably in a different place as far as guys that we feel like we can count on. Bobby Miller's in a different place than he was a year ago. Obviously, they go out and acquire Tyler Glass now. Those types of things, I think, have changed maybe a level of desperation. A couple more super chats to get to. Freedom says, hell yes, badass Blake. Freedom, thank you for all the super chats. I like this one.
Is that real quick? Is that Blake Snell or Blake Williams?
It's a good question. It's a good question. If somebody wants to clarify in the chat, go ahead. I do have to, by the way, Scott Gearman asked me to pass along a message. The big bad dollar Dodgers do it again. Never doubt Andrew Friedman again. We move, chat. Let's ride. That was straight from Scott Gearman's list. Friendsgiving. He's at a Friendsgiving. He's had a little bit too much turkey and maybe some gravy. Who knows? And then this one, Pocket Rude Boy says, LA needs to power wash the San Diego and San Francisco stink off of him. Thankfully, he wasn't in either place that long, but this is fair. So what I'm going to do is I have to run. I'm going to hand the reins over to Mr. Moreno, who's going to take over. Anthony's going to stick around. So Matt, I'll let you guys take care of this one. How do they power wash the stink off of Blake Snell from his years in San Diego and San Francisco? Chat, I appreciate you. We will have tons more coverage on this in the coming days, so we'll chat soon. Thanks, everybody.
See you, Jeff. Yeah, Anthony, this isn't something I'm too concerned about. How do you, any sort of immediate reaction to this?
Not really. Like, the interesting thing is when Pocket Rude Boy posted this and I saw it a little earlier, I started thinking, like, how do I view Snell in terms of, like, who is he? Right? Like when Shohei got here, right? Like obviously he was an angel. Like that's who you identified with him. And like Snell, like I don't really identify him with anybody. Like I guess he spent the most time in terms of like the National League with the Padres, but like he's not like it's not like he goes down in Padre lore, right? Like, whatever. So yeah, I don't know that there is necessarily a stink. I think it would be hilarious for Dodger fans and probably infuriating for both of those other franchises if he went and helped lead the Dodgers to another World Series title. They would be so gassed, and it would be great. It would be so fantastic. I just had one of my good friends in a group chat text and said, now all you Dodger fans are happy when last year you were telling us that he sucked. And it was like, well, yeah, because he sucked for like 6 or 7 starts, like a lot. He sucked a lot. And then he got done with sort of, I guess, what you could consider his spring training. And then he was a legitimate number one. And I think, there's no way that he was not frustrated by that. And he had to have there's certainly a chip on his shoulder, I think, in knowing that he might have gotten gaslit a little bit. We won't know. We won't say or speculate on who gaslit him, But like the fact that he ended up with the deal that he ended up with and he didn't sign it until March, probably had to piss him off a bit. And then him starting slow, it had to be on his mind that like I just signed basically what was forced into this pillow contract with the franchise who probably he was not, he probably didn't have on his radar when the offseason started last year. And then has the bad start and goes like, how is this going to affect me next winter? Turned it on, ends up not really affecting him. But the early signing now is like, this is not going to happen to me again. Not just with the contract, but also with like the absolutely atrocious start to the season that he had. Like, I'm going to be ready. Like, I think that this first year of Blake Snell might be as good as we see. And that's not to say that it's going to be bad after that. I think like he's got something to prove coming into this season, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. Real quick, let's add, this is a big show, so we're rotating people in and out tonight. Blake just finished writing the breaking news article for us, and now he's joining us. Blake, you missed it. There was a super chat saying
that you were a badass.
Yeah, that you were. It said Blake is a badass. So we're not sure if it was Snell or you. We're going to lean you. Maybe Blake Snell is second. Real quick, also, I just want to relay this. Some additional details are coming out. Jack Harris says Blake Snell's contract with the Dodgers includes a $52 million signing bonus and some deferred money. So this is truly an Andrew Friedman special. Blake, I don't know if I'll turn it over to you. If it's a victory lap, if it's some analysis, whichever direction you want to sort of take it and go for it.
Yeah, John Morosi also said there's no opt-outs in the deal, which I kind of found interesting. So that I believe it would take him through his age 36 season then, maybe 37, depending on when he actually turns 32. But yeah, it's an interesting contract there. I'll go with the little victory lap. This was the guy me and Scott wanted. We said he was probably the best pitcher on the market, fit them the best. They don't have to give up any compensation for signing him because he doesn't have the qualifying offer attached to him. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for a lefty in the rotation, so they now get that. And he's a guy with elite stuff. He overpowers hitters. There's been some concerns with the walks throughout his career, but he still won 2 Cy Youngs despite that. And when you look at the Dodgers rotation now, I'm not sure there's a better rotation in baseball just based on pure stuff alone with Tyler Glasnow, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Snell, and then maybe Sasaki, maybe whoever else they end up getting. It's a really deep and elite group. And this is a big signing for them. Like we saw after they won their last World Series in 2020, they went out and signed a pitcher. It didn't work out. So hopefully this one works out better, but it's good to see after they win, they're not just keeping the money and saying, well, we got it done. Let's celebrate that. They're still trying to win more. They're going out. Like we saw the Rangers didn't do a whole lot after they won. Most teams usually don't do anything big. They just kind of take their winnings money and put it to the side, put it in the owner's pockets. The Dodgers keep reinvesting it in the team, and it's really great to see.
And real quick, Mike is asking this. He says signing bonus is spread over the length of the contract, right? I think the signing bonus is due up front, I believe, right? Anthony, do you know?
Yeah, it's typically due up front.
And that's kind of the purpose of it. It's sort of like the carrot to entice the player
to
into
take the deferred money.
Whatever sort of terms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blake, one thing we were discussing before you hopped on, and I expressed some surprise at, was how quickly this happened. I didn't anticipate, Andrew Friedman, we've seen in the past, like he won't do bidding wars. Typically, obviously, Ohtani was an exception. I thought, maybe if Snell and some of the other starters sort of lingered on the market, that's when the Dodgers would look to jump on something. Are you surprised that it came together this quickly?
Not entirely, because we saw Snell last year coming off an elite year. He kind of got left at the back end and ended up getting a 2-year deal with an opt-out. So I think he might have been a little motivated to sign. We know the Dodgers were clearly motivated to go add an elite starting pitcher. We've heard tons of reports about how active they are on the market. So it made sense that they struck early, especially with so many teams competing. I think it was just yesterday we heard about how the Red Sox were trying to get 2 of the top starters, and they were highly connected to Snell. So there were some people saying that the Red Sox were likely to sign a guy already. So if they were making deep negotiations with Snell, then the Dodgers had to jump in and get a deal done before them. Like, I think that all makes sense to me, lines up. It seems like the market's a lot more active this year already compared to what we've seen in previous years where things really linger and go late into the season. So I'm not too surprised by it. I think it was a situation where the Dodgers had their need for a guy they wanted. And he was motivated to sign. There were a lot of teams that were in on him at the same time, so it all just kind of worked out together where it got done pretty early in the offseason. And it's a good thing for the Dodgers because now they can focus on fixing their outfield, adding some starting pitching depth, maybe focus on Sasaki down the line when he gets posted, and it gives them a lot of options moving forward now.
Anthony, do we assume that this ends the Juan Soto sweepstakes, however involved or not involved the Dodgers are in that chase?
No,
you don't think so? Okay.
Yeah, I think we might have chatted just before you got on, Matt. But the way this organization and way a lot of organizations will go into their off seasons, but specifically this one, I know, is they'll earmark money, and we have this bucket for this need. So as unlikely as it is that Juan Soto takes let's say a 4-year deal of like a ridiculous AAV, they've earmarked that money to play in that swimming pool, to swim there. And then if Soto dips, then that's the tail money or whatever that need is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they have the money that's bucketed for the Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Roki Sasaki group. And that's not to say that only one of those guys signs with them. They may sign 2. In a crazy world, they may sign 3. Who knows? And then they have the money for like, okay, here's our number one need. We know it's a front end kind of starting pitcher. Here's that money. And so now what I think this doesn't take them out of that middle bucket with Sasaki and Buehler and Kershaw, nor does it stop them from negotiating with Soto or going after Teo when the time comes. But I think it takes them out of a guy like Jack Flaherty. Like, he's not coming back. Like, I think it's that sort of player who gets impacted by this more than any of those other things.
Yeah, it's that makes sense. What about to the point that Blake brought up? Because this is something that I think I filled in when Blake was under the weather with Scott a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing, as much as it makes sense, as much as we would like to see the Dodgers re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, re-sign Walker Buehler, re-sign Kike, there also was the balance of, hey, like you need to get better as well, right? Like, very rarely do we see across sports, like, championship teams bring everybody back, run it back, so to speak, which a lot of the players have expressed a desire to do, like literally in that sense, where, every free agent is retained and that team then goes out and wins, right? There's always kind of a little infusion of whether it's new blood, different voice, whatever the case may be. How important is that for the Dodgers? And I assume Blake Snell sort of checks off that box now at this point. Oh, that was you, Anthony. My bad.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, it does. He does. And I think that, we've sort of talked about like just the interesting part about like him being one of the first guys off the board. I think officially the second free agent off the board. And based on what happened to him last year. And I think that there was sort of an identifying moment probably for him and probably for the Dodgers too, like at some point, like late last summer, probably, that said like, this is the guy, as long as they don't make a qualifying offer for him, which it was expected the Giants weren't going to, because I think it was not a good fit from what I had been told. Like, they didn't really want him back and he didn't really want to go back. And so I don't think they were willing to take, any kind of risk with him, bouncing back. He had that 2-year deal anyway. So, that's moot. But, I think that them being able to say like, we locked on our target early and let's see if we can get this done early. And one of the benefits there is that cost certainty now, where they sort of know what they're going to be paying him going into the next season. And then they go out and negotiate accordingly. Right. And it was the same reason why like the Ohtani stuff was a big deal, because yes, it's obviously a big deal that they're paying him, $2 million a season and then whatever it is on the books, but it gives them now a sense of certainty to say like, we don't have to wonder, like, if we're going to go after Teo, we're going to make that play. We don't have to wonder what the payroll is going to look like, because we have yet to sign our number one need, which is the starting pitcher. Like, they got that guy. And so now it allows them to sort of be a little freer with what they do, because that need is taken care of. And that was the main need. And they got in all honesty, probably the pitcher they identified as the best guy for them, the best fit for them. And I think who all of us on our shows have agreed was the number one guy when you looked at those other three with him, Fried, and Burns.
Like where this might sound like a funny question. I'm sure I sort of know the answer, but where would you like to see the Dodgers go next?
I mean, until the Juan Soto sweepstakes comes to an end, you have to be involved in it. It's Juan Soto. He's one of the best free agent hitters ever on the market, 26 years old. Like, you got to keep exploring that. I don't think it actually happens, so then you probably have to shift to like Teoscar Hernandez, maybe Blake Trinan types. They're probably going to add another starting pitcher still, so somewhere in the mid-tier to lower-end tier, you're going to be looking there. They can upgrade their bullpen more. We've already seen them add Giovanni Gallegos on a minor league deal. I'm sure they're going to add another guy on a major league deal. They can kind of do a lot of different things right now. I think starting pitching, like adding a top-tier guy, was their biggest focus this offseason. So now that they got that done, they really have a lot of options. And then one other thing I do want to address is I see a lot of people talking about like how Snell is a 5-inning guy and then he's out of the game. So last year, he started the year late because he didn't sign early, and then he dealt with some injuries early. But from July on, he had 14 starts, and 11 of them were 6 innings or more. So, like, once he really got onto his role, got past the injury issues, and built himself up out of, because he had basically a late spring training, like, he was a dominant pitcher going deep into games and giving the team length pretty much every time out. So this is an elite number one type starting pitcher. Like, there was a real case that he was the most talented guy on the market, and the Dodgers went out and got him. Like, it's something to be excited about, not negative about, oh, he's going to go 5 innings and then be done. Like, this is a legit ace.
Well, hey, like before you hopped on, I joked. Daniel pointed out, and I was agreeing with him, that if he does go 5 innings, the Dodgers would have killed for that in the playoffs. They couldn't get consistent 5 innings from any of their starters. So if that's what it ends up being for some reason or another, and it leads to another World Series, then I think everybody will sort of look past it. Real quick, Anthony, on to your point, I think there wasn't, I agree with you. Like, it didn't seem like there was any, real interest from Snell and the Giants, extending their relationship. Obviously, Snell opted out of his contract, but the qualifying offer, he got it last year from the Padres too. He got it last year from the Padres, so even if the Giants wanted to,
he couldn't give it to him.
So from that standpoint, that explains that. But yeah, I mean, there was never really, as you were saying, there weren't any indications of, hey, the Giants are interested in keeping him around if he opts out. It was kind of like he opted out, and that was sort of it. I know the Giants have been loosely mentioned in the Juan Soto stuff, but it seems like they're a little bit busy kind of overhauling their front office and seeing how that's going to end up going for them. I think, Anthony, I know we have you for a couple more minutes. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. You and Jeff, it started a long night, unexpected turn there. What, about a half hour ago?
Yeah, we, Blake, I don't know if you were on or watching, but he had literally just asked me, which of these guys, and we had played this game before already, and I said, yeah, it's still Snell. Like, he is still the 1 and 1A for me when you consider the available starting pitching on the free agent market. We maybe got 30 seconds off of that topic, and the first tweet came through, or the pictures of him in the Dodger uniform from his Instagram came through, and we were like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, what a time to be a Dodger fan. Seriously. I mean, this has got to be the golden age of being a fan of this organization, because they spare no expense. They are aggressive. They are smart. They're shrewd, and they are in this thing to win at every turn. And it is an amazing time to be a fan of this organization. This is what, like, when you enter fandom, this is what you hope it feels like in any sport, that you feel like the team that you root for cares enough to want to win always, and values the people who root for the organization. I think that's the state the Dodgers are in right now.
There may have been a trade deadline or two that was punted, but we can let that slide at this point.
But I think with that punting, we also tend to have like short memories in terms of like the blockbuster trades that they have made under this regime too.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I was mainly talking about two. Was it Blake? When did we go to Arizona 2 years ago?
2023. That was the year they punted, and everyone thought they were going to be a 90 win team at best, and then they won 100, but they still kind of punted at the trade deadline and got embarrassed in the playoffs. And related to that, I do think it's funny. Like just a year ago, everyone was talking about how the Dodgers are the biggest choke artists. They can sign whoever they want, and it won't matter. And now, like, the narrative has shifted so much to every fan base on other team. It's the Dodgers are ruining baseball. No other team has a chance. They're guaranteed to win all the time now. They need a salary cap. It's really funny how that narrative has shifted. And like, yeah.
Mad Dog was very upset that they were even in the Ohtani conversation. I mean, I'm sorry, in the Soto conversations. I'm sure he is not going to have nice things to say tomorrow.
Definitely not. All right, let's let Anthony get out of here. Before he does, though, Laura, longtime listener, says Anthony Witrado is the man. You really know your stuff. Yes,
thank you,
Anthony.
Laura.
We echo that. We're great. We're appreciative to have you on with us this season. So, Anthony, thanks for doing the live show tonight, and we'll see you, I guess, next week, unless there's maybe more breaking news at some point.
Yeah,
but
maybe
if not,
yeah, hey.
If not, have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, fellas.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Blake. Let's get to. I think we have a couple super chats that have kind of stacked up here. I'm not sure if Jeff and Anthony answered this one from Freedom. He wants to know how is the Dodgers' chances of getting Sasaki. His oldest saw him pitch in Japan. He said he was better than Yamamoto. This doesn't impact the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes. Because he's coming over as an amateur international free agent, his market is basically capped. And so what the Dodgers have, they have, and the money that they have now committed to Blake Snell is not affected by that. So no concerns there. David Ramos, we sort of discussed this a little bit. He wants to know if the Blake Snell signing means that Walker Buehler is off the table.
I don't think so. I would say maybe it makes it a little less likely, but even when the Dodgers were trying to add a top starting pitcher throughout this whole offseason, they've remained in contact with Buehler and kind of expressed some of their interest. They want him back. I think they were always going to add at least 2 starting pitchers this offseason, so I think Buehler's still in the mix. I mean, I've made my case about not signing him. I think a lot of people have made their case about signing him, so he's a very polarizing figure.
He's not polarizing, Blake. You're out there on an island on your own. He's not polarizing.
I think there is also a good portion of the fan base that recognizes, like, he was great for his 10 innings in the playoffs there, but other than that, it wasn't great, and he might end up getting paid more than the Dodgers are willing to pay. So I think they're going to add another starting pitcher at some point. Whether it's someone in Buehler's tier or a little lower remains to be seen, but I don't think he's necessarily out.
Are you more open to the idea of Buehler being back now that you know Blake Snell is already in the rotation and Roki Sasaki is potentially on the horizon?
I mean, for me, it's always kind of been, if it's a 1-year deal, sure, whatever. Okay. It is what it is. If you're talking like a 3-year deal with him or something like that, I'm definitely out on that, regardless of what they do. I don't think Snell or Sasaki would change anything from that perspective of Buehler coming back, because I think they've always been looking to add 2 starting pitchers, and Buehler was probably a name for that second pitcher added that they've had in mind. So no, but like, if it was up to me, I'd try and find someone with more upside, better swing and miss stuff, and go from there. But I think they like Buehler enough and have enough respect for him that they would still be open to bringing him back.
I agree. Christopher Torres, who you may or may not be familiar with, wants to know if this means no Burns or Max Fried.
Probably. That money's going to Juan Soto.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's not to Blake Snell's signing bonus. They're saving it. All right, let's see. Esteban says, will the Dodgers consider signing Trevor Bauer? No, that ship has sailed, and for good reason. David Ramos says Soto will sign with the Dodgers or he won't win. So it's not a question. He's going with a little bit of a statement here. Bold one, maybe. We already have Manny Machado's salary that needs to be paid off twice now. The Dodgers have won 2 World Series since Machado bet that fan that the Padres would win one before the Dodgers did. Blake, do you see Juan Soto not winning a World Series if he doesn't come to the Dodgers?
I mean, he's going to sign like a 12-year deal. I think there's probably a good chance he ends up winning one with his other team. he's already made it to 2 and he's only 26. He won one already. He beat the Dodgers to get there. So like Juan Soto is a guy who has won a lot in his career, and I think he'll continue winning.
Here's we have another super chat from Freedom. Thank you for being active with us tonight and other shows, Freedom. I know you're in here pretty much every night we go live. It says, as a 70-year Dodger fan, quit crying Giant fans. We're going to win 3 World Series in a row. So it's he's oozing confidence tonight. I mean, I think that's tough. Look, there's no secret that the Dodgers are obviously going to be the World Series favorites heading into next season. I think that was the case regardless of whether or not they signed Blake Snell, regardless of whether or not they sign Juan Soto. I still hesitate because we've seen it time and time again where, you know, the best team in baseball on paper or in reality in terms of record doesn't always win the World Series. So to, you know, kind of put this out to predict this that strongly is risky. But Blake, do you see the Dodgers repeating, maybe winning 3 in a row?
I think repeating could happen. I'm gonna say no on 3 in a row just because the MLB playoffs are made for randomness and things to go wrong. Like the best team doesn't always win, like you said, and usually the best team doesn't win. I think entering this playoffs, fans were a lot less confident in the team based on their starting pitching than they have been in previous years. Like 2021, the Dodgers were probably easily the best team, the favorites, maybe one of the most talented teams we've ever seen, and they ended up losing pretty early in the playoffs. So it's hard to win, and it's hard to win 2 in a row, and it's really hard to win 3 in a row. So I'll say 2. We'll see what else they do this offseason and what happens, but I think right now we can say they're the favorites for the second.
All right, our next super chat's from Zip Code 0. It says, does this mean no Teoscar and the odds that we sign Kim? I'm assuming, Zip Code 0, that you're referring to Ha-Sung Kim, the Padres free agent. If it's, well, hold on. Before we answer that, Freedom with another super chat says, I'm joking big time, guys. Have a great night and Thanksgiving. Freedom, well, we apologize for not reading the that in sarcasm font. But, I mean, look, I think that's a testament to what Anthony was just saying about the Dodgers is asking about winning 3 World Series in a row is not like a complete stretch at this point with the team that they've put together and all of that. So, Freedom, we appreciate that. We hope you have a happy Thanksgiving as well. Let's get back to Zip Code 0 super chat. Says, does this mean no Teoscar and the odds that we sign Kim? I think, like I said, I'm assuming that you're asking about Ha-Sung Kim and not, I'm not sure how to pronounce the other Kim's name. I know that it's very similar to Ha-Sung. He's going to be posted shortly. He's a second baseman as well. But yeah, I don't, Snell signing has no impact on Teoscar Hernandez, in my opinion. If anything, it makes it more likely that they end up signing Teoscar Hernandez instead of Juan Soto. I know Blake and Anthony think differently, that, you know, they have 2 different, I guess, avenues to getting these deals done. So I don't see that. Ha-Sung Kim, Blake, do you see him winding up on the Dodgers?
I would say there's maybe like a 10% chance or something. I think they're going to look into adding a shortstop or a center fielder because they can move Tommy Edman to the other position pretty easily, and they probably need someone else who can play one of those positions. So if Kim is looking to take like a 1-year prove-it deal, like maybe I've heard some rumors that he does want to be a Dodger, like from early in the season, but then he went out and hired Boris, which I know a lot of people say he's not great with the Dodgers, but Blake Snell, Boris guy, so maybe it came up in the discussions as well. But I don't know. I think there's a chance, but probably not likely.
Yeah, Daniel Barry very simply says, just sign them all. I mean, that could be a strategy. It could work, or it could not work. We have another super chat. Laura, thank you for this. It's our biggest one of tonight. We appreciate you, and we know you're in here all the time. It says Ohtani, Snell, Glasnow, Sasaki, Yamamoto, Bueller, let's go, a bunch of exclamation points. It looks like she's trying to pencil in the 2025 Dodgers starting rotation. I would say you need to add Clayton Kershaw in there at some point, although it could, you know, be similar to what we saw this year where it's second half of the season. But Blake, if that's well, I guess it wouldn't necessarily be opening day because I don't think Ohtani is going to be ready to pitch come opening day. But let's say, you know, May-ish, if that's the Dodgers rotation. How are you feeling?
I mean, I think we'd feel pretty good about that. I think that top 5 is the best top 5 that maybe would have ever been assembled in history. Like, I
Wow.
don't know of a top 5 that could match that. I would say like there's teams with the top 3, like the Phillies with Holiday and Oswalt and who am I drawing a blank on? Cliff Lee.
Cliff Lee. Yep.
Yeah, like that was a really good rotation. I know the Braves have had some really good rotations with Yankees, Red Sox, but 5 deep like that, and then even adding in Buehler, Kershaw, May, Gonsolin, like they essentially have 2 really good rotations if that's the mix there, and it would be hard for any team in history to match that kind of talent.
Do you see a scenario where maybe Gonsolin or May is maybe traded at this point? Like, I mean, yes, it's look, and it sounds funny because I'm the first guy that last year and the year before that was pounding on the table saying, hey, like the Dodgers, you need a bunch of you've run out of starting pitchers now multiple years in a row once it came to October. So at the risk of that potentially happening again, do you see a scenario where maybe Gonsolin or May is traded just because they might have too many pitchers, or maybe, one of the younger guys that is coming up?
It might depend on what happens with Sasaki and who else they sign in the offseason. I think, like, if they were to sign Buehler, I think they'd be more willing to keep Gonsolin in May just because there's a lot more, like, outcomes in that where you have multiple injured guys. If they sign someone who's a little safer than Buehler, maybe they say, okay, well, we can probably trade Gonsolin or May. There could be an avenue where they trade one of them for, like, younger starting pitchers to a team that's more major league needy but has some guys who aren't fully ready and they're looking to upgrade, so you kind of keep your starting pitching depth but also move the timelines back a bit for when they really need to be in your rotation. Gonsolin and May both can pitch out of the bullpen, so that gives them some extra options there. Like, Friedman's all about optionality and not locking himself into any one thing, so they might explore it, and if something comes up where it works out really well, then yeah, I think they'd pull the trigger on that and get a deal done, but I also don't think they'd hate keeping them around either.
All right, we have more super chats, so we're going to get to these before we answer some of the regular questions, just as a thank you for the people who are paying to do this and supporting the channel. We do appreciate everybody in here. It's zip code 0 again. It says, does Freeland start this year? I thought Freeland shortstop?
Alex Freeland, yeah, he's one of their. I think Baseball America had him as their number 2 prospect right now, which is a little more optimistic than most sites have him, and I think he's definitely making strides. But maybe down the stretch, it's not going to be something where they're going to like supplant Miguel Rojas early in the season for him. But if he plays really well in AAA and maybe Rojas struggles or gets injured or something, and they don't sign Kim or Adames or get a center fielder, like he could be in their plans, but I think your more likely timeline for him is 2026.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think, Blake, is there anything you want to maybe add? I know like you joined this later than I did. I feel like you probably got a lot of your Blake Snell stuff out, but before we maybe get to questions or anything just in general that we should discuss tonight?
Not off the top of my head. I don't know what's been discussed. I was writing instead of watching.
They covered like Gavin. It was kind of there wasn't too many. It was Juan Soto, the Juan Soto contract offers, which we've touched on. It was Gavin Lux outlook, and we had Jeff interviewed Fabian Ardaya, and he had some interesting things to say about the Dodgers' trust in Lux and things like that, and not being somebody to maybe write off from the organization, even with Mookie, potentially moving back to the infield. Yeah. All right, then I guess let's turn this over to you guys then for some questions that Jeff and Anthony were about to answer when the Snell stuff broke. As a reminder, if you could just start it with the word question in all caps, that helps us pick it out. Here we have our first one. 01101 wants to know who wins in MLB The Show, Blake Snell or Andy Pages?
From everything I've heard, Pages is like the best MLB player at the show, so I'll go with him. I know Snell's pretty good too. I think this might be a better question for Scott, who is our MLB The Show expert, who has also accused Pages of cheating in MLB The Show, so we'll see. We'll see what he says.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure. I asked Scott about that, and he said that there was a way to maybe manipulate some matchups or something like that. I don't remember, but yes, Scott is probably the better person to give you guys some insight on MLB The Show stuff, and hopefully Pajes wasn't cheating. I can't imagine he would do something like that. Like, how much time does he really have anyway?
If he was manipulating matchups, he's perfect for the Dodgers. Then
that's true.
They thought him well.
That's true. It's looking for every advantage that you can gain. All right, let's see what other questions we have here.
Someone clarified real quick that he was banned for cheating on his Battle Royale runs. So I guess Scott is a credible source here.
Scott's plugged into the MLB The Show world. GI says, does signing Snell and hopefully Sasaki open the door to some interesting trade possibilities with some of the surplus of pitchers? For example, Frasso, Hurt, Gonsolin, May, etc. down the line. And GI, I'm going to put this question down just so that we could see Blake and myself. That was something, we were just discussing. We don't want to fully repeat it. I apologize for getting to that topic before seeing your question, but I do think that it would, if the Dodgers end up signing Sasaki and Buehler after that, or some other pitcher, if not Buehler for some reason, I would anticipate that there are some trades, just because I don't know, as much as I think they need the depth, there would be a little bit of a logjam there that you don't want to necessarily have. And look, I think the other kind of layer to all this is the Dodgers are going to be going to a 6-man rotation next season. So you do need to retain, a good number of your depth, just because on top of needing the extra pitcher, what if there are additional injuries and then you're having to plug in 2 guys instead of 3? Or look, this season we saw several starters go down at the same time. Like, it didn't matter.
It might be interesting if they were to try and package a few of them to get a different upgrade starting pitcher. Like, maybe they call up the White Sox and say, hey, we'll give you Dustin May, Nick Frasso, and some other pitcher, plus maybe throw in Outman or Kurtai or something for Garrett Crochet. Might be intriguing to the White Sox to add a few more starting pitchers with more team control and get a position player back. That is something that they might look into and keep in mind, because then you're not hurting your starting pitching depth as much.
That's a good point. TQT, this is a good question. Who gets the most starts at shortstop between Betts, Edman, Rojas, and Lux this upcoming season?
I'm going to say Edman right now, because I feel like he's the safe bet. I wouldn't totally be surprised if they went with Mookie as their starting shortstop again after the full offseason of working there. I don't agree with that decision if that's what they end up doing, but I think there's a world where that's a possibility. Yeah, I mean, it could be a mix of just a lot of different guys there, with Edman kind of rotating between them and Rojas getting starts. So I don't think Lux will be there. I would bet on that one, so I think he's the odd man out of this group. But yeah, I'd say Edman.
Yeah, I agree. I'm okay with Mookie playing shortstop. I think, to me, it just wouldn't make sense from the standpoint of the Dodgers have said they don't want, the move to the infield was to preserve his body. And I think shortstop is many players, current and former, have said how physically demanding it is. So it just wouldn't make sense to me that you're going to move him from right field to play just as demanding of a position, if not more, when the whole idea of getting him on the infield was to kind of save his body. That's the only thing that just strikes me as kind of curious with that possibility.
I know a lot of people laugh at this concept because, when you're talking about it on a single scale, it is kind of laughable, but both Mookie and the Dodgers have said part of moving him from the infield from the outfield was based on the run from the dugout to right field, adding wear and tear on his body, which one single time, not a huge deal. When you're doing it 9 times a game for 170 days, it does add up. It gets some extra miles in there. So it is a shorter run from the dugout to shortstop and does take a little wear and tear off. But Mookie also wants to be in the infield, and I don't think he cares if it's short or second base. He just wants to be in the infield. So if you make him happy, you take off the extra miles from running to right field. I think they could reasonably say, we can do this for 2 or 3 years, then eventually move him over to second base. We're in our championship window right now. Let's put the best team out there, even if it adds a little more wear and tear to him.
Makes sense. A couple things really quick that have trickled in on Blake Snell. Mark Feinstein says it contains so the deferred money. It's not known how much deferred money it has, and also Snell's contract has a limited no trade clause. Either of those things change your stance or surprise you or really stick out?
I just saw Fabian said the AAV is expected to be about 32 to 33 million with the deferrals. The actual AAV of it is 36.4 million, so saving about 4 million or so there. I mean, it doesn't really change anything for me. I figured he'd be paid around 30 to 35 million on a shorter term deal than Corbin Burns or Max Fried. So, like, I love the deal. I'm all for it. I've said all offseason he's the best starting pitcher out there. He makes the most sense for the team, so I'm good with it.
Yeah, I think from a financial standpoint, it's hard to really be upset with the contract. Even the not having any opt outs, whatever the case is, like the signing, but like all that stuff, it balances out, and I think it's a pretty good deal for the Dodgers. Okay, Morgan wants to know which fan base will give Snell a harsher reception when he pitches there, Giants or Padres fans? I'm going to go Giants just because it's where he's coming from. Padre, I feel like Padre fans won't be happy, but I think the Giants will be more upset because he just came from there. He did have a strong finish to the season, but before that, it got off to a rough start.
I'm saying Padre fans because they're actually like the fan base that is more into baseball right now. Giants haven't been good in 3 years, and their fan base is kind of dying off a little. Like, they don't have as high expectations, where Padres are like, they have we're the better team than you. It's our division. We're going to win the World Series. Like, yeah, Padre fans are much more intense right now about baseball.
It's a good point. And to support that, Michael Rivera says Padre Twitter is going off. They're mad. LOL. I have not seen any of that. They haven't joined the show, which is a little bit surprising because Padre fans have a history of wanting to come into our live show. So I don't know why they wouldn't come in here and tonight and discuss the Dodgers signing their former guy.
It's hard to come in and troll that your opposing team just signed an ace. Like, are they going to say you're buying another World Series? Oh, well, okay. I guess we'll have to live with that.
Hey, don't put it past them. That's exactly what they would say. Ederico says, is it a surprise to expect that Blake Snell signed this early? And that's we touched on this a little bit earlier. That is the one thing that I'm surprised about, just because I didn't think there really hadn't been much traction. Like, there have been some reports of, hey, so and so is drawing interest from these teams, but there really hadn't been much movement on the starting pitching market. I thought Juan Soto would have to happen first, especially with those offers being submitted and kind of getting more serious there. But so I am a little surprised. I think you said you weren't necessarily surprised because of how it went last year for him.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised just because he had a lot of interested teams around him. He already had meetings. There's some rumors that the Red Sox were close to signing a guy and they wanted two of the elite starting pitchers. So if the Red Sox felt like they were close to signing Snell, then the Dodgers had to jump in and get their deal done. Like, I think Snell was pushing to get it done a little quicker and not have to wait until, February or March, whenever he signed last year. So, yeah, I'm not too surprised by it.
Alleluia is informing me that Padre fans were in here earlier before I hopped on. So I guess I gave them a little bit too much credit for not bombarding our live show tonight. All right, we have a few more questions. A couple of them are food related with Thanksgiving coming up, so I'm just warning you guys now. The other one is for Blake and Blake only, because I don't get it. Says Don Kim says, if the Dodgers equal the Empire, which team would be the Republic? And the Star Trek stuff always goes over my head. So Blake, you take this one.
I mean, I'd still say the Yankees were the Empire. Like, they've been the evil team for so long, and now the Dodgers have finally broken through their rebellion against the Empire and have kind of taken control of the baseball galaxy. If we want to go with the Dodgers are the Empire, then I think you would have to say the Padres are the Republic, just because they're the team that's trying to break through and overthrow, like, the big evil Dodgers. So, yeah. I mean, probably not the answer you want, but I think it's the right one.
Let's stick with that really quick. I know you were at Disneyland recently and you went on the Star Wars, right? What's the one where like they march you through
Rise of the
everything?
Resistance.
Yes. Have you? So I've only been on it once. I think you've been on it a few more times than I have.
Just a few.
Have you ever been like, I guess interrogated maybe is the right, like have they I saw them give like some writers a hard time, right? So I get that that's part of the shtick. Have you been the subject of something like that, and if so, how did it go?
I have a few times because I always have like Star Wars gear on. If it's like the Jedi logo hat, they'll talk to me about that. I think like 2 or 3 times ago, I had like a droid backpack on, and he's a rebel droid, so they're kind of calling that out. I talked to one of them about, because like for anyone who's been in the ride, it's very gray and not much color in there. So I was talking to one of them. I was like, we need to throw some pictures up in here, get some color, make it look nice. That went pretty funny. I was like, I'll have to talk to the Emperor about that one. Yeah, it's always kind of funny. I wouldn't say there's any like meaningful, like super interactions I remember from what came of it, other than just a quick like one-liner joke kind of here or there. But yeah, it's always a fun experience.
All right. I think we have 2 more. Let's go with, well, we have a super chat, so we'll go to that one first. Christopher Torres says, would you say signing Adames is a must?
If they miss out on Soto, yes. I think Adames is the second best free agent position player, and he fills a need for them for the long term and the short term. I mean, I think whatever team signs him is going to get kind of a value based on his projected contracts and how things are trending. I know he is a polarizing figure. I know I said that about Bueller and there's pushback, but I think Adames is definitely a polarizing figure. But for me, if you can get elite defense and power with some speed from the shortstop position, like they don't really have a clear option there. You can play Tommy Edman in center field, which is where scouts like him the most and think he's the best there. So it makes a ton of sense for me. I think it would make the team a lot better. And if you're trying to build a dynasty and go out and win now, like for the next few years, go do it. Your window's now.
Do you think the Adames situation becomes one where I was kind of discussing earlier with pitching and Blake Snell specifically, where the Dodgers are sort of hanging around, and if his market just doesn't really develop that strongly, that then they'll look to strike, but otherwise it's not necessarily a likely scenario? Or do you think they're sort of monitoring it and in regardless?
I think they'll monitor it and see where it goes. If it stays like about where it's expected to stay, then I could see them jumping in and trying to get a deal done. If it tanks, I think they'll definitely be interested. And if it skyrockets with a desperate team, like maybe the Red Sox overpay because they miss out on their starters or something, I don't think the Dodgers are willing to overpay for him. But I know he's a player Andrew Friedman likes and covets and has a lot of respect for. So I think they're going to be interested in him and keep an eye on how his market goes.
Makes sense. Laura, she's still beating the drum for Teoscar Hernandez. I know she's waiting every day, every hour that passes. She wonders why he's not back with the Dodgers yet. Laura, I think the domino you have to wait for there is Juan Soto. I don't anticipate, unless it gets to a point where the Dodgers know, okay, his Juan Soto's market for whatever reason has gotten to a level that they're not comfortable with anymore, or he's not interested in the type of contracts they're offering, then they'll pivot to Teoscar. But until there's some clarity there, I wouldn't really anticipate much movement on the Teoscar Hernandez front.
Even from Teoscar's sense, it makes sense to wait for Soto to sign, because then other teams become desperate to get an outfielder and they might be willing to pay him more. Then it potentially increases your contract offer from the Dodgers. Like, I know he said he wants to stay in LA and be there, but if you can get an extra 10 million or something from them, I think he's going to try and wait that one out and see.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I think we'll end with these 2 unless we get some more questions trickle in, or any super chats we'll obviously prioritize. We thank you, everybody. We're up to over 4,000 people in here tonight on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. We're about to reach the 2-hour mark of this live stream. If you're with us at the beginning, you had Jeff and Anthony. If you're with us now, it's Blake and myself. Anthony was still on with us. Jeff had to go. Daniel mixed in at halftime of the Lakers game, and then he probably should have just stayed on, because I saw some tweets that the Lakers had a terrible third quarter. But we appreciate you guys as we approach 2 hours, and we have a few more minutes left. So Blake, let's answer these. As I mentioned, we had some food questions coming. Joel wants to know, ham or turkey?
Turkey. I know that's unpopular, but I like turkey. everyone who's a fan here knows I'm a chicken person first and foremost, and turkey is the closest thing to chicken. So yeah, big fan of turkey.
So have you convinced your family to do chicken instead of turkey for Thanksgiving, or are you guys doing turkey?
We do turkey every year.
Okay. I'm with you on this. I don't like ham at all. I like turkey sandwiches. I don't love turkey for Thanksgiving. I've expressed this before. I think Thanksgiving food in general is overrated and just not great. So from that standpoint, the holiday is not one that I look forward to as a lot of people do with the food and things like that. All right. So yeah, both of us are on the turkey side, which I didn't realize. I mean, I guess I feel like that's kind of a split answer. I know that there are a lot of people who like ham. I know that there are a lot of people who like both, but I don't know if we're in the minority with turkey.
I think turkey historically has been more popular, but ham is like gaining in popularity pretty quick now.
Okay.
But that's just an eye test opinion.
Got it. All right, let's pause the food stuff. We have a couple super chats, so thank you for these. Don't care 187 says Guggenheim needs to buy the Lakers now. Yeah, I mean, look, Mark Walter is one of the minority owners of the Lakers. Him and I forgot who else bought into the team maybe 3 or 4 years ago at this point.
Is Magic part owner there?
He is not anymore. I'm pretty sure he sold all of his shares at some point. That might have been how Mark Walter actually got in. There might have been a swap there. Yeah, Todd Bowley nonstop is Walter and Bowley both bought in a few years ago. I mean, look, that would be fine. I would be okay with that as long as it doesn't necessarily take away from what the Dodgers are doing or impact them in a negative way. All right, let's see what else we had. Zenji says, going to miss Jack, but Snell is the ace we need. Will Roki dare sign anywhere else now? He could have a bad year and still win a World Series. This was actually something I meant to ask you guys earlier. Is there a school of thought where maybe having Blake Snell sort of pushes Roki Sasaki away from the standpoint of, like, does somebody get in his ear and say, hey, like, you don't want to go there. You're not going to get your respect. You're not going to get your due. Everybody's going to say, you didn't really do anything. You're just kind of along for the ride because they have so many stars.
I think it's really tough to answer because we don't really know what Roki wants, but I think there are the two ways of looking at it. I think there's like the negative side where you can say, well, now he's going to be the sixth starter essentially on a stacked team and he won't get as much recognition or hype. He might not get the sponsorship deals he's hoping for playing behind Ohtani and Yamamoto and all the other stars they have with the Dodgers. I also think there's a positive side of looking at it where there's been some reports Sasaki doesn't want to deal with the media stuff as much and he wants a smaller market. So now he can maybe hide a little bit more on the Dodgers. So it depends what he's really looking for and what he thinks. I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows but Roki and his agent. So I think it could make a positive or a negative impact, and it's really just depending on what Roki himself wants.
Yeah, and I do think, yes, in some sense, with all these stars around, if Sasaki is average, is he going to get overshadowed? Sure. But I think if he is very good, that he will still get his due, even if Blake Snell is, ace caliber, Cy Young type of season, even if, Ohtani does something similar, which, I mean, I don't want to put unfair expectations on Ohtani because he is coming back from a second Tommy John surgery. And so but the potential is certainly there for him to be one of the top, again, regain his standing as one of the top pitchers. And I do think that if Sasaki is pitching well and dominating, that it'll be, oh man, look at the Dodgers. They have Blake Snell and Sasaki leading their rotation. They have Blake Snell, Glasnow, and Sasaki. I think he would still be involved in the conversation. So, yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that going either way. Ultimately, I think if you're the Dodgers, the good thing is now with Blake Snell, I don't want to say some of the pressure is off, but I do think some of the pressure is off. If for whatever reason Sasaki decides to sign elsewhere, it's not going to be as much of a blow as it potentially would have been, prior to tonight, where you're looking at the rotation and saying, okay, here's one big option off the table. Now you might need to get a little bit desperate. Who's still available?
Are we getting called out here?
Yeah, Solon style. What's your issue with us, man? I disagree with that a little bit. I think the question or that perception stems from probably a lot of Dave Roberts stuff during the season, right? Like, why wasn't Dave Roberts asked about Joe Kelly when he was asked about it, or he has been asked about it? Like, the Dodgers beat has very good reporters on it who ask him the questions that you guys want to know. We've asked him questions. I know that the columnists sometimes, I think, are who are the subject of the most criticism, but I think what people fail to realize is their job is to sort of drum up like that kind of controversy or I'm blanking on the word, the conversation type thing. That being said, I do think that like New York media is much more harsh and critical than LA, but I don't think LA is soft as the who was it, Solon Style said.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people get mad that like not every single question that Dave gets asked is reported that they want to know, because a lot of times it's something not really worth reporting. Like it's just Dave, I like them in that spot type thing. And I think it was Plunkett last year. Like someone was asking, why wasn't Dave asked about this? And then he tweeted out his article, and it's like the answer is literally right here. We did ask him about this. And more often than not, when I see people complaining about why wasn't Dave asked this question, he was. Like, go watch the video. We post them all. We have every interview up. So yeah, it's just a lot of narratives. I think New York media and Boston media tends to use harsher language, and they have more radio shows and stuff that like are critical of things, but Dodger media, I think, does hold the Dodgers pretty accountable.
Here's a good one, sort of related to all this. Alleluia One says, what do you guys think about East Coast media getting their feelings hurt about Dodgers speaking the truth? And I assume this is in reference to, was it Buster Olney who went on the podcast? And
it sounds right.
Let me see. I know Scott retweeted it. But this is in reference to obviously Mookie Betts podcast that he recorded with some teammates. Yeah, it was Buster Olney who I guess was critical of the Dodgers for things that they have said. For me, more than anything, I'm a little. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised considering the state that the Dodgers were in when they did this Mookie podcast, and it was the day of their World Series parade. A lot of celebrations, a lot of cheersing and drinking throughout the day, and so to kind of do that at the end of the night, this is what happens. Chris Taylor was pretty candid. Everybody was, I think, and I see somebody who mentioned it. Joe Kelly was the only one where his comments were made separate from that celebration day and podcast, and he was pretty critical of the Yankees. It has surprised me a little bit that this has happened, but I think the other side of it is my interpretation has been fans want authentic stuff from players, right? Like just peel the curtain back type thing, tell us how you're feeling. And that's what we were getting. And so now, and I know that Alleluia isn't this way, but now I guess some of the East Coast media is upset with it. But where do you fall with this whole saga?
I mean, for the players, I don't really care about it. Like, my take is always people complain about bat flipping and stuff, but like, don't get beat if you don't want that to happen to you. That's kind of how I see it here. And I know it's different because it's not like the Yankees complaining about it. It's coming from more media, but media's job is also to get clicks and views and stuff too. Like, that's how we end up getting paid. So I get why some media is like taking that angle on it. It's a popular subject. Like, fans were eating up a lot of it for like the positive side of it. So if you can stir up some negative side too, it's going to be a benefit for you. Like, that's just how the media world is.
Yeah. All right. A couple more. Another super chat from Zenji. Can you ask Friedman to upgrade the food in the press box this year? I think the only thing that's going to be changing with the press box meal is going to be the price. I'm not anticipating any sort of upgrade. I think if anything, it'll cost us maybe a little bit more, but I guess so it goes.
If they increase the price anymore, I don't think it's going to be worth ever buying.
That's true, because then at that point, it is getting close to, hey, like I could just go down. Although Dodger Stadium food, that's where I thought it was going. I thought Dodger Stadium food was going to be the question to upgrade, because I think there could be some improvements there. But yeah, it might be pack your own lunch, or like that one day when there was the doubleheader and you saved myself and a few other guys in the press box by picking up Chipotle on the way. That was nice.
Yeah, I think we still owe Vassay Chipotle because you didn't ask him, and he
That's
got a
right.
little upset.
That's right. He wasn't in fairness, he wasn't in the press box. I looked around, and people who were around, I said, hey, Blake's stopping. If you guys want your order, like, place it at this location. He'll bring it in. Vassay was not there. But we'll have to, hey, I know Vassay has he was high on the Blake Snell train, so we're gonna have to get him on the show. Maybe I'll tell him if he comes on, I'll get him his Chipotle.
I was also thinking Toribio, big Blake Snell guy, and he's leaving the beat this year. Like, he's got to be a little disappointed.
Maybe he's coming back. Maybe Snell will text him and say, hey, come back for one more ride. Although that's tough to sell. If you're Toribio, you went out covering a World Series champion, so I don't know how that would work. Heidi's Homestead, how are the Dodgers looking for 2025? If you've seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, when Larry David says, I don't want to say it as long and drawn out as he does, but basically pretty good. That GIF, that I think is the response to your question. All right. Well, here we're getting told Chipotle is not a flex. It is when your options are limited to Dodger Stadium, not being able to leave. And I'm going to defend Chipotle. I like Chipotle. I understand that it's not. EC is saying he loves Chipotle too. It's not authentic Mexican food. I'm not touting it as such, but Chipotle, for what it is, I think is good. All right. Last question here. Cole says, what is your favorite thing to eat for Thanksgiving, and what is your favorite dessert?
I feel like we also have to answer this one about Santander because it's been asked like 10 times, but
okay,
I'll do this one first. My favorite thing is the candied yams. Favorite dessert, I mean, it's got to be pumpkin pie. It's the classic. It's the good one, so we'll go with that.
My favorite thing is fettuccine Alfredo. And I do not have a favorite Thanksgiving dessert. And as everybody is going to be reacting to that, I'm sure we will answer this question. Should the Dodgers sign Santander instead? And Corbin, he's kind of similar to Soto and also Adames. So a lot of signings here in this one.
Corbin, I can only think of Patrick Corbin. Am I missing? Oh, Corbin Burns. I don't know who the Corbin is.
Then I thought Carroll, but Carroll's under team. Like, he's not a free agent. So.
But for Santander, I think Teoscar is the likely move. I think he's coming back if they don't get Soto, so I don't think they're going to be too interested in him. I think there is a report from Bob Nightingale that the Blue Jays like really, really want him. So I think he's probably going to end up there. Yeah, I think Teoscar is the guy if they miss out on Soto, and I don't think there's any other like options for them behind him. Adames, I've made it very clear I want him on the Dodgers. I think he'd be great for them. Whether it happens, I'd say like 30% chance, if that. So we'll see. But yeah, Teoscar, I think he will be a Dodger.
Like, you just made Laura's night. She's been waiting for somebody to say the Dodgers are going to re-sign Teoscar. Real quick, Nomofomo is telling us Guisalos is right by the stadium. Yes, it is. The problem, actually, I think you can order online, but Chipotle was just easiest for everybody to kind of place their individual orders through the app or online, and then Blake was able to just walk in and pick it up. Also, at the time, I had been to Guisalos. Blake had not been there yet. He has since gone and continues to order inexcusable drink, in my opinion. But yes, Guisalos is very good. Yes, Guisalos is very good. Blake's drink choice of drink is not.
Did you go try the Dodger drink that they had?
No, I haven't. And I know, like, I feel like they bring it back every year. They say that it's limited time only, but it's been around for at least 2 years, I think. Eden Noel says, just got here. Blake Snell, 5 years. What? Yes. 5 years. Was it 182 million?
Yeah.
5 years, 182 million. I believe a $52 million signing bonus, some deferred salary, a limited no trade clause, doesn't include any opt-outs. Eden, if you rewind this video back, about an hour now at this point, you'll see Jeff and Anthony reacting to it right as it was happening. Daniel hopped on for a little bit. Then I came on. Jeff had to go. Blake then joined us. Daniel went back to covering the Lakers, which I'll have to see. I'm not sure. I haven't seen how they've been doing. So then it's been Blake and I kind of wrapping it up. And I think we'll have a video up tomorrow morning as well, sort of kind of recapping everything and looking at where things stand and maybe a little bit more coherent kind of thoughts rather than so off the cuff. Joel is saying this is the best live stream podcast. Joel, we appreciate you. As I said, we're up to over 4,100 tonight on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So we thank you guys. Obviously, the Dodgers making a big move certainly helped. But I saw a lot of regulars in here tonight, even before the Snell signing. I was watching Jeff and Anthony while I was doing some editing, and we had a good crowd. So we appreciate you guys. Programming note, we're not going to have a live show Thursday night. That's Thanksgiving. We hope that you guys are able to spend the holiday with your loved ones. Blake and Scott will be recording something. You guys might have to go back to the drawing board a little bit, right?
They have kind of changed their plans for that now. So yeah, we'll see. If anyone has any recommendations on what they want us to do, like throw it in there and we'll see if we can get that done.
Yeah, and if either in the live chat, do it now, or in the comments below if you're watching this after the fact, if there's maybe a topic or two that you guys want us to touch on, leave it in the comments. Blake and I try to go through these pretty at least a few times a day to see what you guys are saying and sort of reply back to you. So Blake and Scott will have a recorded video that should be up maybe around 10:15 Thursday morning. We're still trying to put together the details. I think Jeff, myself, we'll see if Anthony or Daniel or whoever we could kind of recruit to do maybe some sort of Thanksgiving food type thing. I know a lot of people have asked for that as well. So we might have two videos up for you guys. And the food one would be later in the day when it's posted, kind of maybe early afternoon. So if you're with family, maybe pull it up and you can laugh at probably a lot of the food takes that I'll end up having. Because like I said, I'm not a big Thanksgiving food person, but you could, kind of kick those ideas around, and maybe Blake, maybe we'll get you to be part of that one too if it works out. We'll see. We'll have to see with schedules.
Maybe we can get the entire staff and get a real draft going, like 7-man draft or whatever here.
That would be fine for me because I would almost guarantee that I would be perfectly fine with the traditional Thanksgiving dishes. Like, give me the last pick, and I'll still be able to put together my ideal Thanksgiving meal. So
I'm going to make you trade up for a fettuccine Alfredo, or I'm going to take them.
Yeah, no, that if that happens, then I'll run into some serious problems. But anyway, so that's kind of where things stand. And then Jeff and I will be back with you guys Sunday night. But again, no live show Thursday night. We still will have some content up Thursday for you guys. Kind of one baseball focused video, one, I think, food driven video. Like I said, we're trying to figure that out. Look for a video Wednesday morning. I think maybe Jeff and Daniel will try to do something on Blake Snell, kind of tie everything together with all the different details. I know we tried sharing them with you guys as they were coming out live. And then we'll be back on kind of our regular schedule Sunday night. So thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. That's Blake, and I'm Matthew, and we'll see you next time.